Order, and start by Pledge of Allegiance. Flag's over there in the corner. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, we'll start by looking at the minutes of the regular board meeting, June 22. Does anybody have any additions, corrections they'd like to make at this time?
I would just say this here. I did end up sending out the minutes that I had created that were typically minutes in the past, and I know Dave sent them out also. Yeah, I didn't have them at that time when I sent them out, so thank you for doing that, Dave, sending them out. One thing on those, the very last paragraph of page 3 under H. After a lengthy discussion about protocol for placing items on agenda, Mr. Shireman seconded the motion to adjourn. Yes, 0, no, 0.
Oh, should be 4-0.
4-0?
Or was it 4-3-1? Yeah.
And then as long as we have to correct them, French was spelled wrong somewhere in here. Can't find it that quickly, so not important.
I'll go through and look for it.
It's one of the first ones.
Right there.
Page 1, middle of the page, I guess. Yep. Right there. Down low, right there. Up, right there. Okay. Anybody else have anything else about the minutes? Well, then, that's the case. Looking to approve them. Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
And a second.
Second.
It's been properly moved in second that we approve the minutes of the regular board meeting June 22. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Minutes are approved. And then we're still working on the general fund vouchers, so we'll put that off then until we get them done. Public comment and questions. Is there anybody here that has a public comment or a question? Mr. Randy Dean.
I brought a letter to deliver to the board. I can just hand it to you now. I've got a dozen copies. My experience with the board, we hardly have this many people usually, so it's typically the board, but I brought a dozen copies. I'd be happy to share it with you or read it. It's your pleasure. It's 5 minutes. And if it's that, it's not quite that long.
Sounds good, Randy. Yep, go ahead and read it then, and you can hand it out to whoever you want to. And
All right. To the Clear Lake School District Board of Education, I'm here tonight as a taxpayer and an observer. It was my honor to serve for 18 years on this board as a treasurer and later as chairperson in 2011 when I decided to step aside and let others take this job. I left feeling extremely proud of my work here and also of the team of professionals that led this district. Of late, it has come to my attention that this board is struggling. I've noticed it in the minutes, and I've heard it from parents of students who are concerned. In my opinion, your struggles are preventable and easily cured by making a few quality decisions. I want to urge you all in the strongest possible terms to continue to take good care of this fine school district. Restore order to your meetings and respect for each other in the community. I personally participated in the hiring of Superintendent Brad Ayer and Principal Chris Peterson, and I found them both to be, without question, deserving of trust. Their passion for our students' success is well worth heeding their leadership. This school organization is privileged to be led by these incredibly gifted human beings. When I initially ran for school board in 1993, I said it was time for adults who had children in the hallways to be seated on the board. I stayed on after my 2 children graduated, but in 2011, in keeping with my statement, I stepped aside. My experience here gave me more than I gave back to it. I am forever indebted to the fine people I worked with in these buildings. I pray you all are able to come away from your experience, speaking to the board, as enriched as I was. If that is to be true, You will need to make some vital and healthy adjustments to the procedures of the past several months. Sincerely, Randy. And got copies for the board in particular or anyone else that's interested. So,
Yep. Well, thank you for that, Randy.
you got it. Thank you, Randy. And that's all I've got.
I'm going to ask everybody that's here to sign in so we have a accurate record.
Okay.
Can we do that? Okay.
If you guys could sign that so we got a record of who's here tonight. Did you guys get a copy? Yes. Any other comments or questions? Okay, well then we'll move on to the old business. A, construction update.
Okay. HDMI cables, I believe, Chris, did you say, or Ben,
Yep.
were being installed or are installed?
In the process.
In process, okay. Blacktop, I did get a call from Monarch Paving. Scott Poy Excavating was supposed to be doing the removal of the old blacktop and the subsurface. Was supposed to start last Thursday. I haven't heard why we didn't, but anyway, they will be starting that, or Scott will be starting the removal, and Monarch will be in as soon as they're done. And obviously, our hallways here at the at the high school, tile is gone, and they're going to start laying tile by the end of this week. So.
Do they have a machine that brings that tile up, Brad?
They came in with a walk behind to start with, and it's just basically and with a chisel front on it, and it takes one row at a time after the first day. Because at the elementary, when they removed them, they came in with a rider, an LP-powered rider, with probably about a 2.5, 3 foot swath, and rode as they peeled them off, and had guys shoveling and so they came in with that after the second day and said, "Yep, we need bigger equipment." So they used a rider, which they did it in a day and a half, removed all the other tile. So now they're in the process of cleaning up, and like I say, would like to be laying by the end of the week.
When do you think they'll be completing the tile job?
We'll be done by the end of July. That's the timeline that Gary had given them, so we can wax, put on 4 applications of wax, and be ready.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, then we'll move on to old business B, the 2014-15 budget review and approval.
Yep, one more time, like last time, if you go behind all your vouchers and reports, I've got the same budget summary sheets, and I've only got one it would be the final one, to share with you. Final numbers don't change. The numbers stay the same, so it's just a move again. If you go page 2, on page 2, under undifferentiated curriculum, under benefits, under the 200 object, you'll see 324,230. That was 344,230. Taking $20,000 from there because we did have money left over here at the end of towards the end of the year. A couple of people didn't take family insurance, or one took family or didn't take family, took in lieu of, another one only took individual, and so it left some insurance money, things like that. And so moved that down to capital objects 500, and so that number was 15,000, and so now it's 35,000. So again, no difference in the total bottom number, but what that $20,000 did is buy iPads at the elementary, 30 iPads for the RTI program over there. And so I would ask for that approval.
You guys have any questions? Well then, kind of nice. We've got some iPads for the kids down there. We'll be looking to approve that budget change. If I could get a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget change.
Okay.
Any seconds?
I'll second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the budget change. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. And we'll move on to the old business C, update regarding view-only access to financial accounts.
Yep. You had asked me to contact our local bank. Right behind the budget report, or the budget numbers that I have, is a sheet from Eben Johnson. Eben is the Vice President, Government Banking, and he is the contact for Government Banking, which we are fall under those auspices. And so I contacted him. He sent me an email. He couldn't be here tonight, or he couldn't be available by voice either. And so he did send the email, and he said, I checked into the availability of adding additional remote access users to the Clear Lake School District online banking software. The super admin for the district can set up read-only access for any number of people that require it. The bank would then issue additional security tokens to allow remote access to the bank's online platform. These security tokens must be accounted for and kept in a secure location at all times. As a rule, I recommend limiting access to the system to those that require it. And so, he couldn't be here tonight, and he said this here: if you had further questions, he would be glad to, at our next meeting in July, answer questions for you. He manages, like I say, the publics, different public entities throughout Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, wherever First Merit is. And he said, I haven't had this kind of request by any school district that he manages. This would be a first, but he was very, I think, careful of saying, yeah, go ahead and do it. He would want to talk to you. And his thing was, is there any other way? What are they looking for? Is there another way that it can be produced? Because, again, the security issue that this takes us into, he's very concerned about. And so, but he'd be willing to answer questions at the next board meeting. And if we did want him to come to the board meeting, he's in Oshkosh. He'd have to get a hotel room, and there'd be some costs, things like that for us. So, but he could do it via phone, also answer questions if the board wants to continue in this direction to get this type of ability. So he is just going to wait for me to get back to him.
Well, I think we should move forward with it.
Are you currently in the super admin?
Yeah.
On that account? Okay.
Yep. Yep. And the security tokens, it's an actual that you got to plug into the computer, and it scrambles, and I guess that I'm explaining in layman's terms that when you put in the password and name, you've got to be able to answer questions. And right now, Lori Karnick has one of those, and it's secured at all times in our offices. And so he's concerned about having 3 of them, because we talked about the 3 people. He's concerned about having 3 of those basically out in houses.
And this is for just a view-only account,
For a
correct?
view-only account.
Okay, so if anybody did get it, they wouldn't have access to do anything other than view it.
I couldn't tell you, Tom.
Okay, well, if it's a view-only account.
I couldn't tell you, Tom.
Okay.
That's
Well,
a question for him.
Okay, well, that seems fine.
I guess
Does the board want to move forward with getting those?
of having him on the agenda, I guess would be the question. That's what he's waiting for me to get back to him. And
So you said July he could do a call-in?
he would prefer to do that because he's coming from
I don't wanna spend the
Oshkosh.
money necessarily to bring someone in for a few minutes.
And
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
so, but if the board was going to continue to move in this direction, he would want to talk to you, because he's very apprehensive about doing it. I'll just put it that way. Even for view only, I mean, once you have the chip, and so.
Any thoughts?
The other thing would be, I've got Ben here. I mean, he has an idea of the system. I don't know, Ben, do you have anything to add there as far as, if you don't mind me asking, I'll use our professional.
No, that's fine. I mean, the concern with adding any access to any system, it doesn't matter if it's a bank or whatever, you know, if you give somebody view access, there's always a concern. The fewer users you can give access to, the better off you are. And whether or not the users are justified, I'm not going to speak to that. I'm just, you know, from a security perspective, that's where that guy's coming from, is the fewer tokens that are out there, the fewer read access that's out there. It's similar to if you invite a burglar in your house and you tell him he can't touch anything, but he can only look around, he can still see where the windows are, where the doors are, what time you might be home. There's things that they can deduce from the access that they do have, and that's why the fewer users, the better off you are. That's, I'm assuming that's what he's going to tell you in the phone conference.
Okay.
So, anyway, he's waiting for me to get back to him if the board wants to still continue, then talk to him. We would schedule, he's penciled it in for our next meeting in July. And he'll have some questions as far as, okay, the risk reward, why, and so forth.
Okay.
Could he answer also then, what are other options to give the same get the same information?
The thing is, yeah, he wants to know, what are you looking for? What identifies that I don't know what they're looking for. So that's what he would ask is, well, what do you want? If there's a hard copy print that can be made, he would just as soon do that.
Sure.
I said, I don't know, because I haven't been shared with that.
Okay.
Well,
So
we might
we
as well.
bring him in July, or have him phone conference, or?
It's up to the rest of the board.
Let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
It's 2 weeks.
Do we need to make a motion on that?
No. Well, that's up to the president, I guess.
Well, what the heck,
It's an item on your agenda, and if you want to put it back on the agenda with having Eben's presence and his phone conference, okay, or, yes, he will come over. It'll be at our expense.
well, I don't think we need a motion for that. It's not an action item on our agenda, so we won't have an action on it. So let's just go ahead and get them lined up then for the July meeting and see what we can learn from him then.
Okay?
Just to make clear, it's going to be a phone conference and we're not spending money to bring them over.
Right.
Okay.
Good call, Brent. Okay, any other discussion? All right, let's move on to discussion regarding recording of board meetings.
Okay. At our last meeting, you had the discussion about doing that, and a lot of questions as far as that I had, and so we left it as, let's get Ben Strobach, our IT person, and ask Ben for his expertise. So I told you that Ben would put together a presentation, and so, Ben, it's all yours. Dave and Pete, you're going to have to turn around.
Thanks for coming in, Ben.
No problem. Could we maybe kill a light or two? I didn't just realize we were going to have quite as many visitors today.
Just that front one. Yeah, that's, I think, good.
So from what I understand, and Mr. Eric just kind of giving me an overview real briefly before, was that you guys were looking at some type of video conferencing solution in the boardroom, if I understand that correctly. Let me get this thing working. Or not? It's all right. So what I did is I put together just a brief PowerPoint, and where I would like to start with this is with a problem statement, and that's just to make sure that we're using an actual deductive approach to this, make sure we get what we want, make sure we have something that's going to give you your desired result. So to lead off, as Mr. Ayer pointed out, what we're trying to do is come up with something to document board proceedings effectively for accountability and archival purposes. Secondarily to that, I added on the fact that it would also be a video conferencing solution in that room, because we don't really have any video conferencing rooms. I think we learned real recently that we had a couple interviews that were distance, so to speak, over Skype and whatnot, and we kind of had to improvise a little bit. So we don't have anything that, as of right now, supports video conferencing. So the purpose today that I want to really do is, this is not any type of a solution that I'm offering you. This is not swang or opinion one way or the other. I want to provide you guys with a little bit of information so that way you ask the right questions, so that way you know what questions to ask, and you know what questions I might have in order to move forward. And that is, this is kind of a chicken and the egg type of a situation where if somebody comes and says, we want a video solution, here's X amount of dollars, well, you kind of got to have a little bit base understanding of what's out there, what the options are, and going into this 360-degree awareness thing, how does it impact other areas, and what might the hidden costs actually be? So once you guys are armed with that information, we can move forward. Another thing that I would like to do is I'd like to provoke the thought and the questions to help formulate the effective strategy as we move along, rather than going with a ready, fire, aim approach. And I would also like to define the exact needs and requirements that you guys have, because when Mr. Ayer came to me and said, hey, we want to do a video conferencing solution, is that going to be just recording the board meeting minutes or recording the board meetings? Is that going to be a multi-use room? Can we make it into a distance learning room? That kind of thing. So that's kind of the purpose here today, is just to give you guys information, facilitate the discussion, and see where you want to go from there. So these are some of the things that I highlighted as far as questions from my end. And starting from the top, when we're looking at archiving the board meetings or any other proceedings that might be in that room, the first question is it going to be video? And I'll get into some of the pitfalls of video, but under video you'll see that there's a difference in video. Are we going to go and buy the cheapest webcam that we can and record the video, or are we going to buy a $10,000 camera? Are we going to have a TV or a projector or an interactive screen or anything like that? So we're going to have to narrow down whether it's going to be video or audio only right off the bat. There are pros and cons to both. I'll go over that over the next few minutes here. But quality is also going to be another consideration. I have a couple slides that will illustrate some differences and give you guys something to make a baseline decision off of where you might want to proceed from there. So in regards to having audio in the room, I'm referring to the microphone and the recording capability. And the reason I bring that up is because if somebody says we just want a cheap webcam in the corner, that's going to give you an entirely different experience than having a microphone array in the classroom. And I think Nick is actually here, and he could probably attest to the difference between having a microphone in one corner of the room versus having the entire classroom mic'd. And I assume that is a world of difference from your perspective. Now, it does obviously impact cost, and that's kind of why we're here today, is to just, these are the things that might be hidden that I would like everybody to consider before we move any direction. One of the things that I had thought of when Brad said that we wanted to get some cameras and stuff like that in there was, do we want to limit the scope of this project to just recording the board meetings? If we're going to start putting money into something, should we put a little bit more into it and get way more out of it? And that kind of gets into the, Mr. Crawford has a distance learning solution in his classroom. We have a distance learning classroom down the hall there. Would that be something we'd like available for the students in this particular boardroom? Do we want to have that available? Do we want to have it available for hiring processes where people might be remotely located? Do we want to have it available for long-distance Skype presentations? I believe those happen quite frequently in your classroom, if I'm not mistaken. But we only have so many classrooms that we can actually do that in. So that's something I really want you guys to think about as we kind of go through this here today, is what should the scope be and what do we want to limit it to? The other thing is, what is this actual recording process going to be used for? Are we actually making the videos available for people to view online, or are we just archiving what's there to the best of our ability and maintaining as much detail as we can? Because there is a bit of a difference. If we're just making a record to satisfy open records requirements, that's going to dictate a very different solution than having something where the public can view it and get the feel and the impression as if they were actually attending the board meeting. So think about what you actually want to do with this system in the end. Another thing to consider is, how is the video going to be managed? And that is to say, no matter what the solution is, if it's a video solution, somebody's going to have to work with it. I'll get into that stuff in a little bit more, but it's something to think about. And during that management process, somebody's actually going to have to archive it too. And again, I'll discuss that in a little bit down the road, but just kind of keep it in mind at this point. So as far as the archiving and the accountability goes, I want you to think about, while we're discussing and moving forward a little bit here today, Do we want the videos to be available online to everybody that's out there? Do we want them available on DVDs or Blu-rays that can be checked out, rented, or purchased from the district or business office? And how many prior meetings do you want available in that type of medium, whatever that might be? So to start off, I'm an advocate of doing things right the first time. I don't like doing them repeatedly. I don't like losing money and replacing stuff. So what I would like to encourage you to do is think beyond what you might be looking at today. And that is to say, if a simple webcam will get the job done, what might you want to do with that webcam when you're down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road? If you can save a few bucks and get a TV from Walmart that's standard definition because nobody wants to buy them anymore, there's probably a reason nobody wants to buy it anymore. And that is to say, if we look at high definition versus standard definition cameras, there's a pretty significant price difference, but what you can do with one versus the other is entirely different. So I do have a couple examples just to kind of illustrate why I believe that if we're going to do video, you should do it right and go with HD. These are two pictures, side-by-side comparisons of standard 480p definition versus 1080p definition. It's the same thing you'd see in your TV. This is a little difficult because it's not something that you can really kind of comprehend. You're looking at a picture of a sunset and a fish. But I do like this one. And this is something that I've seen a lot, especially from the law enforcement side of things. That's a standard definition video. That's an HD closed circuit TV camera. On one, you can probably pick the license plate out. On the other one, you see two blurry shadows. It really does no good for you whatsoever. So, when you're in a board meeting and, if we're actually trying to capture detail and give that end user experience of, you were there, think about what they're going to be seeing. If I want to be able to see, either somebody who might be a complete stranger in the audience and recognize them, one camera might give you one option, whereas the other one won't. The other thing to consider too is not everything that you see in a board meeting will be people. There might be material, there might be awards, there might be plaques, that kind of thing that, the detail is going to be important, especially if you want to give them the experience that they were there. This is just another example of standard definition versus high definition on a closed circuit TV camera. Again, this actually illustrates the difference across the gamut of available resolutions right now. As of right now, they're actually up to 4K, which is 4,000 lines of resolution. It's 4 times HD. I would not recommend putting the bleeding edge money into a solution like that, but I would recommend at least going with HD. So I'll skip over the next one because I think we have plenty of people here that are waiting for me to be done. So one of the things that I did want to point out is that, especially in regards to resolution of cameras, it's a proportionate cost to quality issue. Ultimately, you're going to get what you pay for, but at the same time, it's going to pay itself back in the long run. Another thing I want you to consider as far as cost when thinking of cameras is how many cameras do you actually need? And that's to say, if you think about just covering one area in a boardroom and giving a wide-angle view, is that going to give you the picture that you want your citizens, your constituents, however you choose to look at it? Is that what you want them to see? Or do you want them to see from two different angles? Might there be somebody from the crowd that chooses to stand up and speak, or if you have a camera up in the corner, you don't even see them? If somebody holds something up, are you going to be able to see what they're even holding? So storage size and storage costs, these are definitely proportionate with the quality of the cameras. I have a couple slides that I'll show you just kind of the storage differences and what to consider as far as that goes in a second here. The quality of the camera is also going to dictate what you have available for making your video accessible to the public. And that is to say, if you use a webcam, you're not going to burn that onto a DVD. It would be a waste of a DVD. If you use a 1080 camera, you can always downscale and you can put it onto a website. But if you go with the cheap camera, you're not going to have the option. You're pretty much going to be stuck. So that's something I definitely want you guys to keep in mind. Again, you get what you pay for. I'm a huge proponent of let the requirements define the specifications, and that is to say, I know a lot of people that don't do that and go the other way around. And what always happens is they wind up with something in their hand and they go, well, I can't use it for that, now what do I do with it? Those are solutions looking for problems. We don't like those, they cost a lot of money. So if we can decide here what exactly you guys want to get out of this, we can move towards that and give you exactly what you need. Again, I used to work with a guy that loved this phrase, ready, fire, aim. This is classic. It's ready, aim, fire. So you guys know that you want to do something. Let's define what it is, aim precisely at where you want to get, and then move towards that direction rather than finding what you want to do and then deciding, well, was this good enough? Again, I kind of go back to if we buy the better cameras ahead of time, whatever the solution may be, we can always add the capability down the road. You know, if we have one camera that's of high definition in a corner of the room and you decide, you know what, that's all we can afford for right now, you can always add a second or a third or a fourth down the road. But if we have cheaper cameras, you're going to wind up replacing every one of them before you can do that. So I'd rather see at least a dynamic and scalable solution, if nothing else. Again, replacing them down the road, far less efficient use of capital and resources. Getting into the number of cameras, I just have a couple simple points here. And this was going back to what is the room going to be used for? Is it going to be just documenting and archiving the board meetings? That's going to be a different situation than, do we want a full conference room where, students can come in and do distance learning and, now they're talking to somebody in Istanbul or China and they can actually see, both sides of the classroom, or they can see the teacher or whatnot. It also goes back to the is one camera enough thing? Why do you guys want the video in there? Does the scope go beyond capturing the board meetings? Another thought is there going to be any kind of a document camera? Obviously, you guys have plenty of paperwork in front of you. If the purpose of recording the board meetings is archival purposes only and it's facilitating state records management, that's a different situation than if you want to have something somebody can look at home. If you guys have a letter that's read in by a member of the public, it might be a nice thing to be able to hold that letter under there and see it. If it's a certificate or some type of an award or whatever the case may be, there's another camera to consider. So it kind of gets you turning, and I want you guys to think about what can we do with this room, what do we want to do with this room, and what can we afford to do with this room. Obviously, that's going to be a concern. So getting into the storage size of the actual video, just so you're aware of the hidden costs that can really easily get wrapped up into this. 2 hours of continuous video at a standard 480p, which is a higher resolution, older TV set that people used to have, which is 720 by 480 for resolution. That's 1.08 gigabytes for a 2-hour video. On 1080p, which is 1920 by 1080, it's 5.4 gigabytes. Now, when I did these calculations, I will tell you that all of the assumptions for both solutions are that they're 30 frames per second, H.264 encoding, and with one camera only. So if we add more cameras, obviously the data rate doubles. It also doesn't take into account any audio that might be there, but it's essentially marginal. It's not really factored for a reason. So what does that mean over time is that this is essentially what the storage curve looks at from a standard definition camera to an HD camera. And down here on the x-axis, you'll see that it goes up to 50 hours of video, which is roughly 135 gigabytes worth of data. Now, to you guys, that doesn't mean a whole lot. To me, what that means is that's a lot of stuff to store, especially when we think about we have to archive it for 7 years because it's open records. So, if we were to look at, actually, let me go back to that for a second. If we were to look at, how much video would actually be saved, that's a different question than how much video will be available to the public as well. So I believe it's 7 years, so depending on how many board meetings you have, you can see where 50 hours is probably a low end of the scale as far as how much data that would be. Getting into the storage cost to hold that, because that's obviously going to be relevant, it's a hidden cost that you guys should be aware of. I just want to briefly touch on what our information technology strategy is, and we've moved towards a cloud-based strategy over the last few years. The reason for that is it's cost effective with free competition. A lot of people know that I'm not a huge Google Apps fan or Google Docs fan, but at the same time, without Google, Microsoft wouldn't have started giving free copies of Microsoft Office to all of our students here. God bless them. Another major reason that we've actually shifted to cloud-based strategy is because of the security liability. When we have IS Corp outsourced down in Madison, we don't have to worry about a data breach essentially because it's a liability that's not in the school district. They're managing the servers. So if there's somebody that actually hacks their server, we're not responsible for that, if that makes sense. You look bewildered, Tom.
Nope. Nope, not at all.
It's basically, it's a load off of us as well as it's cost effective in the long run. So all of our web access is actually outsourced in the school district right now. So our website is hosted by HostMonster, which is a subsidiary of Bluehost, and that is not on site. One of the reasons that we did that with the website was to reduce a point of attack. Websites are the number one origin of attack right now, or target for hackers. If you have a website, that's the first place they're going to look. I'm sure with banks, you guys are well aware of that. They actually recently changed some of the security requirements for DNS security and stuff like that. And I don't think it's any surprise the stuff that's been going on in the news lately. So by us taking it out of here and putting it on another server somewhere else, we're basically taking that target off our back and putting it on somebody else. If our website gets hacked, our content might get deleted, it might get changed. We can fix that. If our website gets hacked and it's in-house here, now our firewall's been compromised, our server's been compromised, and so might everything else that's attached to it. Along with reducing the point of attack, it also reduces the bandwidth bottleneck for our student population. And that is to say, if we think of the internet as a garden hose, there's only so much room for data or water to flow. In the end, if we can keep everybody who's on the outside of this building, who's looking to get to our website for video or rich multimedia, whatever might be hosted there, if they're going to somebody else to get that, they're not using up our student bandwidth that's available. That said, because our website is hosted, we actually have a couple options for the hosting plan. Right now we do have the unlimited plan. After doing some digging, because we were looking at posting video on our website and seeing what was available, I realized our webpage takes up about 1.3 gigabytes worth of data. Even though it's on the unlimited plan, what I found out is that unlimited is not actually unlimited. And I guess the point to highlight here is that in their terms of service, it's designed to host websites. Bluehost, which is also HostMonster, does not provide unlimited space for online storage, backups, or archiving of electronic files, documents, or log files. Any such prohibited use will result in termination of the subscriber's account with or without consent. Nothing in life is free. So what that means in the end is that Bluehost and HostMonster are web hosts, and they want to avoid becoming multimedia hosts. That's not the end of it for us, though. All that means is we'd have to seek out another option if we're going to have video for documenting the board proceedings. If we're not going to make them available to the public per se, and we're just going to archive them, then this really becomes a non-issue because we can find another way of hosting or maintaining the data offline. So again, I go back to before we start moving forward, think about what we want to do with this. One option, if we're going to host it for the public, would be YouTube or a similar type of file service. There are some limitations to the accounts there. I did a lot of research on this after the request just to find out, is this a valid option? There are a lot of municipalities that are doing that. They're posting their minutes out there. There's some length of video requirements that we might have to work to actually achieve, but it would be an option.
Say, Ben,
Yeah.
I was just on Amory's website, and that's what they've got. They've got,
YouTube.
yep,
Yep.
link it right to YouTube. And
They were one of the ones that I looked at, and the only limitations are, I believe it was the file size to upload, and depending on what the video solution was, I don't think it would be impossible to achieve. It would just be, I'm not going to do any more research into it until we actually have a direction or a strategy that we want to pursue, if that makes sense. I want everybody to be aware of everything possible to consider.
I clicked on one of the board meetings, and it was almost 2 hours long.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
I know I don't even think there is a time limit. I mean, I've seen entire movies that are out there, but I believe it just goes by file size only. So, depending on what we scale the video to, it would be absolutely an option. So, again, regardless of the accessibility, archiving will obviously have to comply with open records laws. So just keep in mind that there are two different animals. There's the what you want available to the public, without asking for it, and what we have to save. So no matter what the YouTube limitations might be, if they only let you upload, 20 videos that are 4 hours long, that just might mean you have to narrow it down to the last 10 board meetings or whatever the case may be. So I do want to point out, though, that with the amount of video that we're talking about on that high side, with 150 gigabytes or so, there's nothing here that we're going to have server-wise that we're going to want to archive that on. So whatever the solution it is, we should pursue it and not assume that we can take that on right now, if that makes sense. I did do a quick calculation just to show you where that data wound up being, and that was with an average of 2 hours per board meeting, with 2 meetings a month and 12 meetings a year and 7 years. On standard definition, which is not the camera that I would recommend, it was 181 gigabytes. On 1080p, it was 907, which is just shy of a terabyte. So, and that's just for 7 years of meetings, 4 hours, assuming nothing else. I'm sorry, that was 2 hours per meeting. So, just for the sake of another number to consider, if it's 2 cameras or 4 hours, either way, it would be the same amount of data, and it would be 1.8 terabytes on the 1080p, and just shy of 500 gig. It's 362 for the standard definition. So this was just kind of an interesting consideration. If we said that we were going to burn the videos to a DVD for either archival purposes or to make them available to the public, the kind of data that you're talking about for 7 years is 383 DVDs. That's a lot of DVDs. If we were to put them on Blu-rays, which I think we can get up to 50 gigabytes now roughly, it's still 36, but they're very expensive, as are the players, and the recorders, and the people that have the ability to play them would be limited. We don't have a single computer in this district, I think, besides maybe one that has the ability to even play Blu-ray DVDs. So again, I kind of go back to how are we going to have people access the videos? Are they going to ask for them? Are we going to post them on YouTube? How many prior meetings are we going to make accessible to the public? Will the videos be sent to the Amory local cable channel to be broadcast? And obviously everybody's going to say, well, we're not in Amory, we're in Clear Lake. Well, we don't have that here, but I do know if I go downtown and turn on a TV, they have the Amory channel. It's possible it could be sent over there and played for Clear Lake residents that have access to that. This is a major consideration that I would like to highlight, and that's just, before we proceed, something to think about. And that is, regardless of the solution, we have to address who's going to manage the video. And the reason for that is, I talked to a neighboring school district, it was actually Osceola. They pointed out that when they looked at doing the same thing, I believe they ran a pilot, and what they were running into was they needed somebody that could go in and edit the video. I'm looking at Mr. Ganji just to see what kind of... What they found out was that if they didn't have somebody actively managing the recording of the sessions, they would wind up going into closed session, leaving the thing record, and they'd be done with the video. And now before you post it, you have to go back in and redact it. And if anybody here has any video editing experience besides Mr. Ganji, that's not an easy thing to do. It takes a little bit of time. I shouldn't say it's not easy. It's time consuming no matter how easy it is. So once the video is recorded, another consideration is who will extract and post the videos. Whatever the solution is, somebody's still got to download it. I'm assuming that you would want some type of a introductory cover letter on it, say, Clear Lake School District Board meeting, July 13th, 2015, at X amount of time. Time goes into that. Who will archive the videos? Even if we were to post them on YouTube, we still want to have some type of an archive ability. And the reason for that is, if YouTube gets bought out by Microsoft tomorrow, they can turn it off. And if that was the only place we had the videos, now we're violating open records laws. So no matter what solution we go with, we should still have a different solution for archiving the video. And who's going to manage that? So if it goes to YouTube and then it goes to a DVD or an external hard drive or whatever the case may be, it's still somebody's time that's going into that. For every 2 hours of video, a reasonable estimate would be 1 hour of time spent managing the media. And the reason for that is it's not instantaneous, it's not a Word document. You have to open it when you want to get to your spot. You either have to know where it is, and about the only people who would know that would be at the board meeting themselves, or you would have to pretty much watch the video to find what you need to have redacted. So, I will point out that in part of my research for this, one of the companies that offered a bid pointed out that there was a product called Juno, which is a cost-effective solution that was designed actually for a flipped classroom that can work very well for this. And what it does is it basically records the video, allows you to set the format to wherever you want to have it sent off to. It can significantly reduce the management time that goes into the video requirement. So I did have Tierney Brothers quote 2 video options. One option was a full distance learning conferencing setup, like we see in the classroom right over there, or in the distance learning room itself. That included, basically a 52-inch touch screen. It had the 2 video cameras. It was a fully mic'd room, which Dylan Kurtz and I actually went in and we compiled a list of the construction materials in the room, the ceiling tile construction materials, the dimensions of the room, and we basically used that to generate the quote and gave the information to the contractors, who then said, it's X amount of microphones to cover this space. These are the microphones that work best with the type of paint that's on the walls. These are the cameras that are going to work best for the angles. So that being the premium option, the bid did come in at $25,000. So that is we can do everything with this room option. The second bid that they quoted us was the basic recording and media management, that's referred to as Juno. Just the software and the camera was $3,500. That does require us to provide our own computer to record the video and upload it. And it also, neither one of these solutions accommodates or accounts for the backup or where you're going to host the video. But these are the things that we'd have to put immediate money into right now. And the reason I'm showing you guys this is just that way everybody has a full understanding of the gamut that's available, and then we can talk about and figure out where you want to go and what we can start chasing down from there. So again, both of the bids take into account the size, dimensions, and construction of the rooms. So another option that has become very popular lately is the audio-only option. Essentially, there's not much to it. Talked to Tierney Brothers. They didn't give me a solid quote because they, I think, really wanted to chase down the $25,000 option. But they did say that we can get a high-end microphone. I'm very familiar with electronic recording from other lines of work, and I can tell you we can do that with a mic room for probably less than $700. Now the thing to consider with an audio-only option would be, without the video, the storage size becomes less and less of an issue. It still requires management and archiving, but it's significantly decreased as far as storage requirements. And what that means is we would have no issue archiving that here, because we're talking for the same 50 hours, probably less than 500 megabytes to keep the audio. So as far as the resolution to this, we've defined the problem. What we're hoping to do here is define the requirements to resolve it. And what I would like to know from you guys, or to at least think about, is what kind of budget are we looking at? What kind of medium do you guys want to pursue? What kind of quality, depending on the medium, do you want to pursue? And then we'll move forward with narrowing the scope. And that is to say, I'll get you all the bids you want. So after we narrow the scope, we can proceed with testing and procurement. I actually had Tierney offer to bring out a Juno system, or they offered to set up a demo room, but I think they want some kind of a contract before they did that. But once we test that, then we can move forward with implementation if you want to. So just to put some things up there, again, just to sum it up before I open it back up to you guys. There's a lot of solutions out there. They can range from a Sony Handycam on tripod in the corner all the way to the fully decked out distance learning room. You get what you pay for. Do it right the first time. Go.
Do we have a full distance learning room that could be adapted at this time to be used for that?
That I couldn't answer. That I would defer to.
I'm not sure either.
I mean, as far as the equipment that's in there, it would be possible. I just don't know what the
Recording ability is?
yeah, I mean, no matter what, even with that distance learning stuff, they still had the recording and the Juno type of setup attached to that. It could be adapted. I think the bigger question that I would ask is not from a can that be done standpoint, but from is that a good idea standpoint. And that's to say, it's in a classroom. The only one I can tell you that distance learning room down there would not, because those are standard definition cameras. Mr. Crawford's room would. And I guess the question I would throw out there is, I know he's here a lot of times when I'm still here at 7 o'clock at night. That might be kind of inconvenient to kick him out of his classroom once a week. Does that make sense? It'd be something to consider.
Check out the recording ability too, because that's not designed to record. I don't believe, Nick, you don't record in there.
No.
No.
No, and actually the other consideration on that would be, that was purchased on a grant, so I don't know what the limitations of the grant were.
No.
I don't believe that would be an issue, but it would be something we'd have to check out just in the interest of being vigilant, I guess. So,
Question, Dave?
yeah. So again, it just kind of gets down to you get what you pay for. Think about the management of the video, how you want to archive it, what kind of quality you want to get out of it. Do you want it to be expandable or not? Do you want it to be dynamic? Do you want it to be something more than a board recording system? What kind of accessibility do you want, and how are we going to store it? Or what do we want to have to store, I guess is probably a better way to look at that. So that's pretty much the egg before the chicken. I'm hoping you guys have questions that you want to ask.
Any idea on what the storage cost would be once we accumulated 7 years worth?
You know, and kind of the reason I got into this presentation was that way, you could see, okay, the difference between an HD camera and an SD camera and audio versus video. Because for me to answer that question for you, it goes back to a question to you, which is, what kind of, are you talking video and are you talking HD?
HD video, 1 camera.
If we're looking at the 7 years and we're assuming the assumption of 2 hours per board meeting, 2 meetings a month, 7 years is accurate, and we're looking at a terabyte of storage, you're probably going to be looking in the neighborhood of $1,500 a year to keep it backed up.
Question for you, Ben.
Yeah.
I've dug around in the statutes, and I can't find where it said that if we had a video recording of our board meeting, we had to keep that for 7 years. So we've got the minutes, and we've got all the legal documentation it takes for the meeting. The video is kind of a put it out for the public to see.
Right.
See what I'm saying? So why why do we have to store that for 7 years?
What it comes down to is body cameras on law enforcement. A lot of this issue goes, and my knowledge from it goes back to that. In the public sector, when we create a record, that record is now subject to the limitations of the open records schedule. And in some cases, like for a crime, you know, it's I think for a misdemeanor it's 7 years, for a felony it's 25 years, give or take. Point being, usage of a body-worn camera on a law enforcement officer creates a record the same way that if we were to record phone calls here, that is a record. Every email that we send here is a record. When we do a video or an audio recording, it is a record. And because it's a board meeting, that's what dictates that it would be 7 years. If anybody's going to challenge that, I'm not the attorney. I just know that's what's standard, is if a video is created, it's 7 years.
So we should ask other school districts if they're actually keeping their video for 7 years, or
Yeah.
if they're just relying on the records to take care of the state requirements.
Well, I think I would check with our attorney before I check with other schools.
Oh, well, certainly.
I'm a believer that just because somebody else does it, that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do.
Excellent point.
Does anybody have any other questions, or?
Just from a cost standpoint,
Discussion.
Brad, say we went with the requirements, like the 1 camera, 2 hours, and we put 1 person on doing the managing of the archiving and getting it to where it needs to go. What would that person cost us?
I don't know how many hours. I mean, I need to know hours and the salary and benefits. I mean, how many hours are we talking about? Those are the things that Ben was alluding to, is, okay, if we're going to hire somebody to do this, or who is going to take responsibility if a point at Mr. Ganji, but then we're taking him away from something else,
Right.
from teaching kids. Taking Ben away from something else, managing a district. So if you're hiring somebody new, how many hours are we looking at? I can't tell you a cost until I know that. And the kind of salary we're gonna end up paying that person.
So you're saying we've got nobody in-house that could do this for us? Or do we?
If you look, to put that on my plate, I would have another discussion about that.
Got
Well,
plenty of
that's just
time, so I mean-
that's just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a point of discussion to have. I mean, if we're,
I think the other question then is also if we go with this system that we have to run all the way through, and then the closed session stuff, who's doing that? What's their, what's the liability of having someone see that closed session stuff? And so figuring out how to
logistics.
have that access or limit that access to edit that out, something else to think about.
Well, we have to get up and close the door. If we did that, we'd have to remember to turn off the camera. I mean, it's that simple, I would assume.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Brent.
It can be that simple, but it takes one mistake, somebody's information getting out to really make this expensive.
Yeah, I think the bigger issue would be you'd almost have to, if it were me, if I may interject.
Yeah.
And that's, you'd almost want somebody, whether it's a board member or otherwise, to watch that video from start to finish to make sure there's not any profanity, not oops, we forgot to turn the camera off, because the liability from accidentally releasing that would far exceed the liability of somebody who wasn't necessarily qualified to watch the video, you know what I mean? So just,
Well, I could.
And then it, go ahead. Go ahead,
go
Dave.
ahead.
And then in our discussions, some of our discussions, something like this, and something else comes up to where we say something that is confidential that we've got to watch what we say to make sure that we're in that atmosphere that it's
yeah.
we're being very careful about what we talk about when we talk about it.
And when, another officer walks up to, myself, that's the first thing they'll do is body camera. It's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we've
So it's
got,
just-
go ahead.
Go ahead.
As long as we've got our gentleman here, we got any more questions for him?
Could this room be used for more than just recording board minutes and board meetings? Could
Yeah,
it be
that's completely up to you guys.
Mhm.
I'm
mean,
completely open-ended on it,
It makes sense if you could make it a multi-use room.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's some educational options that you can use. and
Absolutely, and
applications for
that's-
just, it just doesn't need to be for the board room. It could be for, make it into a classroom, and we could use, we could maybe use a bigger room for the board meetings. Look at all the people here tonight, so.
absolutely.
That room to me is very small, and it's not very conducive to allowing people to come and actually view what's going on. But, could you set it up in here?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for buildings use stuff, but I mean, if you're gonna go all out, is not a unreasonable thing to at least consider. And that was, that's the kind of thought and the kind of foresight that I want to see put into it ahead of time.
Yeah,
Is that,
it doesn't need to
should we be doing more with this?
Right. It doesn't need to be just used for that. I mean,
Right.
we've got a beautiful facility here. We might as well use it to its fullest extent,
Right.
you know.
And I know a lot of places, they have auditoriums that, they went to having their board proceedings in the auditoriums because a lot of them are set up for what? Sound, lighting, and video. Those are the three things we talked about here. Well, two of them anyway.
And that would make it more accessible to the public for people to come in to the meetings. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it.
I mean, that's up to however that discussion would take place. You guys tell me where you want it, and that's where I put it.
I'm assuming that if we set it up, the thing is fairly static. You set it up in the boardroom, it's not
Yeah.
mobile to the library.
No. If
So if we had,
the biggest reason for that you know, when you look at the acoustic design of a room, you put the microphones in for a particular room. So to get something that's going to be universal or ubiquitous, you're going to drop the quality. You're going to suffer somewhere, and that is, you know, you go from mics that are designed for, you know, 15 cubic feet down to an omnidirectional. You know, you're getting into the, well, you might as well just open your laptop and call it a day. You know, if you're going to do it right, you know, it's going to be, this area is for that.
And I don't know, maybe this is a question for Brad to research, but if we set this up and we decide to tape our board meetings, and we have a situation like tonight where we can't be in the boardroom or whatever, is it something that if we do it, we have to do it? Do we have to be consistent with it?
Good question.
I mean, that's, you know, if,
I don't think it can be hit and miss, it's either all or none.
that's my
Yeah.
question, you know, because, you know, if we,
It's like-
and where do we set it up? Do we change our meeting location? Do we set it up like here where we,
Or do you
You
change
know.
your meeting time?
yeah. So, that's just a brainstorming idea just to think about.
I got to ask the question is, okay, I mean, if we're talking about investing time and money, and in Ben's time right now, but why are we looking at videoing and broadcasting? Have we had a request for that? Are our meetings not accessible right now to the public? Can the public come? I'm asking questions that I think need to be addressed too, that I think are common sense questions. That why are we talking about videoing? Have we had a request? I haven't had a request come to me. Have our meetings been accessible? If somebody wants to come to them, they certainly can. And so I guess that's my thought is I'm not against it by no means, but I think when we're talking about doing something and spending taxpayers' money, that why are we justifying it? Is it justifiable? Now, if we're going to take away from kids' education, you asked me about budget. If we're going to take away from kids, maybe it means cutting a half a teacher or cutting a program to do this. That's a pretty important decision for the board to consider. Or if you're going to go to referendum asking the taxpayers, hey, we need $25,000 or plus a person to manage this, if we're going to go to them, you better be able to justify that. And so, like I said, I'm not speaking against it. I just think those are questions, too, that you need to address as a board, that why are we looking at investing that kind of money for videoing?
I guess
meetings?
I would answer that by saying we should look into making it more than just the boardroom. Let's use it as a multi-purpose. We could use it for kids, for the kids too, at the same time. It doesn't have to be primarily for the board. But, you know, with the way things are nowadays, the internet, access, you know, I think it's important that we show some transparency here and accountability for what we're doing as a board.
I was going to say that. Yeah, just 100% transparency. There's absolutely nothing to hide. And that way
And
there's
I
no-
agree. There's nothing to hide by
Nope.
this board
Nope.
or
So
the
then we put it
administration,
out
so
as a-
somebody can come in and watch the board meeting anytime.
Or somebody could go online and watch it
Yeah.
at their
And
convenience, because
I'm
maybe
not,
they
again,
can't.
Dave, I'm not against it, but I mean, to justify everything that's going into it and the money, I mean,
Well, and just to point out again too, I mean, you know, there's a significant difference in the investment, you know, looking at audio only, at least to start with. You know, if you guys want to say, hey, you know, let's do something and see how many people are actually watching it. You know, you can still put audio only clips on YouTube. You can get a really nice recorder and get a good 3D depth of sound system for, you know, less than $1,000. You could start with that and see how many hits you get or what kind of comments or feedback you get. It's an option that I'm just going to throw out there if there's an inherent fear in making any kind of a large capital investment. I mean, you can always start smaller. And unlike buying a lower quality camera and then having to replace the entire thing to accommodate a higher quality camera, you know, you're just simply going from one medium to the other. You know, the recorder can also, you know, I'm sure be shifted at that point to the music department or whatever the case may be.
Okay, so we've talked about the Cadillac program. What would be the cost of just having it a smaller, more, I don't want to use the word cheaper, but something that'll get the job done?
Yep, and that was
Yeah.
the second option that I had up there
Yeah.
was the Juno system, and that was $3,500 without dedicating a PC to it.
Right.
So, and that was basically this is basically the cheapest I'm gonna quote you kind of thing. And that is essentially what we're paying for, is the software. It's, the setup included, I believe it was one HD camera, the microphone array in the conference room, and the licensing for the software.
And we need a PC.
Yes, and we'd have to dedicate a PC, which, you know, I'm assuming the specs would have to be fairly decent. I'd say probably add another $1,000 to that.
Last one I bought with a terabyte was $600.
Yeah, so.
Ben, would that include the management and then also the storage, or would those be
No,
added
neither
costs?
one of those solutions include anything of that.
Okay.
And the reason I avoided that is because there's 1,000,001 opportunities out there. And it's really gonna be dictated by what you guys want to do with the video, you know. Are we archiving only? Because that's gonna be a different solution than we're gonna make the last 7 years available online. I really need at least a general cardinal direction on where to start looking before I can offer you any kind of definitive research into what the options are. Does that make sense?
And I still have a question of whether or not we have to truly archive it for 7 years. I don't know. So we can dig into that too.
Yeah, and those are the assumptions I'm working off of. If it doesn't have to be and we don't, obviously the situation's different.
Yeah, I'm curious.
So in the spirit of the conversation, I think what would be prudent to do tonight would be to flesh out any more questions that we think we would have, and then visit this again at the next meeting.
Well, I think there's some questions we could probably even bring up tomorrow, maybe,
Yeah.
with the archiving.
Sure.
The other thing, I think if I were looking at this, it would be, is the recording of the board meetings almost a fringe benefit to something that down the line, or even in the near future, that you'd want to look at, like, if you have 2 distance learning rooms now, is there value to having additional larger space, having the media center? I don't know if, that would be something as a learning opportunity here that could be used a lot by students. And, it sounds like you said that the one was paid through a grant, or, looking at it maybe on some other ways to say, how do we increase the value of the media center here? And then the fringe benefit is we get to record the meetings, and it's, not a whole lot of additional.
So that'd be a question for our administration.
And the teachers. The teachers
Where,
are doing that, I would sure think.
Where would they envision that investment?
Which teachers specifically would benefit the most from that? Here, which one of you guys? Anybody? Who's doing it now, or anything like that now?
Mr. Crawford, actually, his
Every
room.
day, I teach my history class for an hour to other schools in the area. So I use it literally every day. And then the options for distance learning field trips exist if you're willing to research which one you want to sign up with. The difference is everything has to go through CSA. So I guess that would be an additional component, because I can't just dial up a number and have a distance learning field trip. So I don't know if that's an additional step, if that would be an issue or not, but that's how I have to pursue them. And it's great if you can budget your time to use them. I don't know if it would be used in here, because we have that same technology in the other distance lab right now, but that's not as cool as the one in there, because it's not the big giant TVs, and you can't accommodate any of the students.
And it's 20 years older.
Yeah.
I think the question would be, if I might kind of redirect, would be, would you see a value in the larger area accommodating, a
Well, I
larger
wouldn't,
group?
because I have it in my room all the time. So for me, I guess
You don't care because you already
I
have
don't care,
it.
I already have it. I don't have to pay for it. That's my classroom. So I guess, flex off.
Yeah, and I think that's a tough question as far as without people, yeah, Nick's experienced in using it and so forth. The other teachers haven't been trained. And so are they, I mean, is that the direction? And I think we have to come back to our vision as a district. I mean, does this add to it, the overall, and is it something that we want to pursue on a larger scale? So a lot of questions, and I knew Ben's presentation would stir those up and get you thinking about it. From the camera sitting on the tripod in the corner to, hey, yeah, another accessible room that can use it for whatever. What are you looking for? And so that's what tonight's presentation was about, is what are you guys really looking for? Identify that, have Ben go out and get the prices and things, quotes, and then we'll see what it looks like.
I want you guys to be able to talk amongst yourselves and be able to come to me and say, you know what, we thought about everything. We want to chase down this, and maybe this as an alternative. I'll get your prices all along.
So just to touch on Mr. Crawford's room just a second. So we've already got video, we've already got audio. How big of a stretch would it be to just do it there?
But it doesn't record right now, Tom. I don't know what the recording would be.
Okay.
If there's any recording, it would have to go for CC.
Yeah, it'd be only at CISA that could record, but that wouldn't be ours. I mean, that room's not set up to record.
If we were to add it, you'd be looking at putting a video codec in there that could actually go to a DVR. So cost-wise, I mean, I wasn't prepared for that question, to be honest with you, so I couldn't give you a number, but it could be done. I mean, I'm also a believer that if you give me enough time and money, I will do anything you want me to.
Sure. Well, I mean, if we're halfway there and it's just a recording aspect of it, perhaps it's another way of looking at it.
And the only thing I can't answer there is, you know, I would never, that's above my pay grade to say that, you know, we can take that room and do that with it from, you know, 6:30 to 8:30 or whatever, every other Tuesday or every Monday.
Okay, are there any
Does that
other?
influence your schedule at all?
It would drive me up the wall. But,
Like I said, I usually leave, I think pretty close to the same time.
but you know, who am I to say let's use my room at the same time? You know, it's my room. Am I gonna have to clean up my stuff every Monday? I got piled. Next day's Friday. Yeah. I don't know, it's just another thing to think about.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions come to mind, you guys, for?
And not really for Ben, on that, kind of to dovetail off of what Brad was saying, was one thing I was going to ask was, are we pursuing a solution for a problem that doesn't exist? I get you want to be open to the public and have it available, but do we have are we trying to fix something that's not broken? We're spending a lot of time and thought and energy and possibly dollars. I don't know if there's anybody that's, if we threw it out there on YouTube and the internet, if we got 3 people to look at it a month, I'm not sure there would be much more than that.
Hard to tell.
Yeah,
Don't know.
There's a way to track that.
Well, and I mean, I don't know is there a way to ask the community before we really jump in with both feet and say, here, we've got a great solution. Where's your problem? Just a question. I don't know if there. I don't know if there.
I've asked around a little bit and said, taken some temperatures, and I've gotten pretty positive reviews from that.
Okay.
So
Well, the
far
other
it's-
research would be interesting is just even ask some of the districts who are doing it if they would be willing to share kind of what their traffic is. You know, that'd be pretty easy to do. Whoever's managing that would be able to tell you how many people are looking at it regularly, and again,
Yeah.
you know, if
YouTube,
it's a
you can
handful.
easily see it
Yeah,
right there.
right.
Should see it
So,
right there.
if it's a
Yeah.
handful.
That'd be part of the research, that
Yeah.
whether Ben and myself
I would definitely
reach out to other schools.
I would definitely recommend talking to, you know, other schools that came and saying, you know, what was the process like, what were the pitfalls? Because, you know, we all share horror stories, especially technology-wise. You know, kind of like, oh, hey, we did a 1-to-1, but We did it the hard way and it cost us an extra $500,000. You know, definitely get the other reviews.
Okay.
As far as surveys, we do have the ability to do that.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? Then we will move on to our new business.
I'm assuming I'll just.
Oh, Ben, thank you for coming in.
Yes, thank you, Ben.
Awesome.
I won't do anything more until I'm directed to then.
There you
Correct.
go.
Yep.
Thanks, Ben. Approval of speech therapist candidate.
Okay, we've had it posted for quite some time, and myself, Chris, were you in on it? You've been in on interviews, and Dawn Western, and this one's necessitated by the retirement of Rose McCutcheon, and so we would like to recommend Kim Torgerson. Kim is from Eau Claire. She graduated from UW Eau Claire, will be a first-year person. We'd like to recommend her to fill that position.
What percent is that?
That's a 100% position.
100%.
Yeah,
And she come in as a first year?
she'd come in as a first-year person.
Is her name Kim?
Kim Torgerson, Torgerson.
Anybody have any questions?
How?
Go ahead, Tom.
I don't have a question. Don't know. I don't know anything about them, so I can't ask anything.
Okay. Well, then, seeing none.
And this is the application, the applicant you're.
Yeah. I would say this here, that speech therapists are very hard to come by. We're fortunate that we had the number of interviews we did and to have the quality that we did, and to have a person say yes, because we did have 2 people turn it down originally. And so,
I'll make a motion, we accept her.
I'll second it.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve Kim Torgerson as our speech therapist. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. And we'll move on to new business, approval of speech education instructor.
okay. Again, interview committee, Don Western, myself. Nick, were you in on that one? You were on that. You got to do special ed. It's special ed, and again necessitated by the retirement of Mr. Fredrickson. And so we'd like to recommend Whitley Bohm, and Whitley resides from Onalaska.
Whitley Bold.
Bohm, B-O-H-M.
First year again?
First year again.
So what's that mean, first year? This is their first year? at
First
school?
year, first job teaching.
First job teaching?
Yep,
Salary, entry salary range.
yep.
Okay.
But first year teaching, new graduate this May.
Well,
I will move to extend the offer to Whitney Bohm for a special education teacher.
Second.
been properly moved and seconded to approve Whitley Bohm for the special education instructor position. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Is it Whitney or Whitley?
Whitley.
Whitley.
W-I-T-L-E-E. Whitley. All right.
W-I-T, not H.
W-H-I-T, I'm sorry.
Then we'll move on to approval of a part-time elementary music.
Chris, you want to do this one?
Sure, we interviewed last week and had members of the music department participate. Mr. Gillis also participated as well to help out, but we interviewed a few people last week. We'd like to recommend Jill Malls. This is a 50% position, and it was created when Ms. Hanson took another full-time position elsewhere, so it would be replacing Kirsten Hanson. But so Jill Malls, she is a resident and lives in the Turtle Lake area. She's a graduate of the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. She did have a part-time position in the past at the Barron School District before her coming here. So I'd like to recommend Jill Malls.
It's Jill?
Jill, yeah.
Jill.
Malls, M-O-L-L-S.
Anybody got any questions? entertain a motion.
Yep, I'll move.
I'll second it.
Been properly moved and seconded to approve Jill Moles as our part-time elementary music position, 50%. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. And we'll move on to D, establish date for our annual meeting.
Yeah, each year, the board asks residents of the district at the previous annual meeting the ability to set next year's annual meeting. And so the board has that opportunity. Traditionally, our annual meeting has been the last board meeting prior to the start of school. In other words, the last board meeting in August. This year, that date is August 24th. We would hold a board meeting at 6:30, and we would adjourn in time to go to the annual meeting in the Commons. And so what I'd be asking the board is to approve August 24th, 8 o'clock, and that needs to be posted in the local newspapers and so forth. Dave, you're the official person that posts. Your name goes on it as clerk. But you need to vote and set that date.
Well then, I'm looking to entertain a motion to approve that date.
I'll move to set the annual meeting date at August 24th
At 8 PM
at 8 p.m.
Correct.
in the common.
In the
In
Commons.
the Commons.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded that we establish August 24th at 8 o'clock for our annual meeting in the Commons. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. And then we'll move on to E, discussion regarding district retirement policies. Tom, you wanted to put that on the agenda, so we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think we ought to discuss the teachers, and I'm assuming by the amount of teachers that are here that somehow got out. But I didn't like going through and finding that the teacher retirement policy is buried in the teacher's handbook. If it's something that the school district is responsible for and it's a financial liability, it should be recognized and accounted for. I mean, we've got the administrative retirement policy. I think the new board members ought to be made aware of it so that it's right in our board policy. I think it dovetails in with transparency and honesty, that this is what we do for our teachers. I think by putting it into our board policy, we try and safeguard it from discontinuation through legal action. Legal action specifically 1931, as we've handed out in that. And that's, if I remember right, or if I could probably be misinformed, but when this whole thing got started, they were saying, now look, we understand you can go 10 miles to the west and pick up $5,000 to $10,000. You can go to the border and make $10,000. If you take a little bit now, we'll help you in the end to try and attract and retain quality teachers for a long period of time. I think this is a fantastic idea, but I don't think it ought to be hiding in the teacher's handbook. I think it ought to be board policy so that it's here. This is what we do. This is how we take care of our teachers. So that's my discussion.
So you're looking, Tom, to just move it from,
Move it from the teacher's handbook and put it into our board policy. If that's what we do, I'm surprised that we don't have it as a board policy. Realistically. Bottom line, I don't think it ought to go away, and I think it ought to be recognized. So,
Brad, do you have any history on why it is where it is?
Yeah, and I guess this is just, if I knew what we were going to discuss tonight, I would have liked to have been prepared. But Tom didn't share that. I asked him, why do you want this on the agenda? And so I don't have documents here and so forth. I can tell you from history, from my head, and that the retirement policy was part of negotiations years ago. I don't have the date in front of me when this started, but going back into probably the late 80s. And so it was set up as part of a total package offer to the teachers. And so it was part of, the package that the teachers got, part of their total settlement. And so that year, that was bargained for, again, every year. And whether it was wages, whether it was benefits, insurance, health, dental, those kinds of things, the early retirement package started as part of a package to say, you know what, the district can save money. That, okay, we don't want to push our more experienced teachers out the door, but at a time when you're paying the highest person at the highest salary, we can offer a retirement that would allow that person, or would encourage that person to leave, and you could bring in a person at a lower rate and save the district money. And so that's how it became about. Also what Tom has already said, that it was a way for us. This was a deferred payment mechanism to say to our teaching staff when we're recruiting that, hey, we have a retirement policy. If you come and have an excellent career with us, in the end, you're going to have something because of it. Again, that money wasn't just say, well, here you go. It was part of a total package. So all the teachers took less pay up front in order to have a retirement. Every time it changed, that was figured in that total package. So if the total package, and again, when I talk total package back in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, that was all of the benefits. I come back to that. And so the early retirement was figured in there. So, okay, they took a less of an increase in salaries back during that year when, okay, let's talk about early retirement or the retirement package. And so again, that's how it ended up as part of our handbook in 2010-11 when contracts were did away with that included those. We had a bargaining agreement, I should say bargaining agreements, were did away with. This was something that, okay, yeah, it was something that we wanted to continue, and so it just moved right into that teacher's handbook. The teacher's handbook replaced the bargaining agreement, and so that's how it ended up in there. And so whether it's board policy or whether it's teacher's handbook, I don't know that the district's trying to hide anything, that we're hiding it in a teacher's handbook. The teacher's handbook is a public document also, and so it's not being hid there. It became part of that document just over history because it started as a bargaining agreement.
Well, why don't we move it to board policy, and why don't we be proud of it?
Good question. Like I say,
Yeah.
Is there any reason we can't? That you can?
It's part of our handbook. We have a handbook committee made up of a number of individuals in here, also board members, also support staff.
Right.
And so they have addressed those kinds of issues. Okay, that is this something that we want to take a look at the stipend for teacher retirement? Okay, it's going to go back to that handbook committee and let them, again, there's board members on that handbook committee also, that is this something that we want to do? And so is it something we want to change? And so I guess I can't speak for teaching staff that are here, but to pull it out of the handbook where there's a mechanism in place to, you want to say negotiate it? I don't know if the staff really would be fond of that. And so that would be, in asking the question, if you were asking me the question, should we do that? I would say that would be something to go to the handbook committee and say.
And how often do they meet? Or when do they meet?
When necessary.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
And so
and
it'd
I
be
guess one of
something
the
that I would go to them,
Okay.
because I would want their input.
Sure. Yep.
This is their
Yeah.
package. They were part of it from the beginning.
That makes
They
sense.
gave up dollars and cents. And, okay,
No, I think
what's
we're
the
in
pros and
agreement that
cons
this is
of,
good.
yeah,
So
what's the
let's-
pros and cons of moving it from the handbook and the handbook committee to the board?
Couldn't it be in both? Couldn't it be in the handbook and in, as part of board policy, this is what we do? Or is it like,
They're two separate deals, and you update the handbook. It takes two separate actions by us, and we could do it that way, but it takes two separate actions by us to update the teacher handbook and board policy. So it'd be,
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
we
because
certainly.
board policy stands alone
Yes,
from
yeah.
the teacher handbook,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. That would be the
But
only
what's
thing I can think of.
downside
top, but-
Putting it in board policy.
So I guess that, and I'm going to ask that, I was just going to ask the opposite question, Tom. Is there a problem with where it is right now? Again, are we seeking a solution for a problem that's not there? I guess,
Okay.
why are we,
To me, when I'm reading board policy, the board policy covers what we're doing as a school. Okay, so if we've got everything down there, including the administrative retirement policy, how come the teachers don't have a retirement policy? If it's defined in most people don't look into a teacher's handbook because that tells the teachers how to leave things for the substitute teacher and things on how to deal with the
no,
student and
no,
grades.
that's two different things. Teacher's handbook is, like I say, the old bargaining agreement that spells out retirement, spells out a lot of different working, grievance procedures, things like that. What you're talking about as far as the teacher's handbook rules that the principals create, that's a separate document also. So two separate documents there. But again, that's the question I ask is, and when something like this goes on the agenda, obviously you can see some concern by people that are vested here and people that aren't vested. I think there's going to come a time when you're going to want to, as a school board, look at retirement policies. And you're going to want to use that committee as a sounding board, as a planning committee to come up with whatever changes you're going to make. You pull it out of there, and now it's the boards. It's strictly the boards.
It's kind of one and the same, isn't it? Because the board has to approve whatever the committee comes up with.
Yeah.
It's kind of this one and the same.
But now you're removing the committee. It is the board, now you just, bang, you don't have to meet with that committee.
I don't think that's an accurate statement at all.
No. You don't have to. I'm not saying you're not going to.
Yeah.
But as a board, you set policy. Okay?
So this is not our policy right now.
It's in our handbook. Yes, it is.
We
The retirement.
We adopt the handbook every year.
Yeah. And this is
So-
in there.
So as part of that adoption, it is part of the
I understand
school
that.
boards, all right?
And I
Okay.
get that. Yep. My question is how come it's not out for everyone to see? Because a teacher's handbook, most people aren't going to look at a teacher's handbook, but they'll look at our board policy and they'll see that this is what we do for our teachers and for our administrative staff and everybody else. And if in negotiations with the teachers, they say, could you bump us a couple $100 on our retirement policy? That, I don't see where that sentence would be out of.
And that negotiations takes place through the handbook committee. Okay, right now with the law that we're under, the CPI rule, as a board, you can only give the CPI. That's all that you can bargain with the committee. All other things are off the table.
So this
Life insurance.
This is off the table.
No, health insurance, things like that are not bargainable. Okay? So we wouldn't have to have, we talked about health insurance a couple board meetings ago. We wouldn't have to have a insurance committee, but we do because we believe involving our teachers, involving our staff, we can get much more accomplished. Rather than saying okay, I'm making an administration recommendation to you as a board, make the teachers, make everybody pay 14% of their health and their dental. Whereas if we do it with the committee, so making the analogy to the handbook committee, okay, the change that you just talked about, that's not a bargainable change. It's not something that the bargaining committee, because we do have a bargaining committee, the board and some of the teachers that are on that, that's not a bargainable item by law now. It's
So
not,
So what we're doing right now is not a bargainable item.
correct. Now, it's
So what's the downside of making our policy then?
because you
If
just
it's
took
not a
the.
bargainable item,
Yeah, it is as a handbook. Okay?
you just said the opposite thing.
No.
We have a
Pl-
CPI.
Please,
Yeah.
okay. Listen again.
As-
We have a bargaining committee. Okay? That's different than the handbook committee. They're allowed to bargain base wage only. Okay? All the other things by Act 10 were taken out, including retirement package. And so for us to say that we're going to, at the bargaining table, talk about retirement, it's not allowed. Okay? But we have a handbook committee where there's board members on that can be there. Yeah, they're going to talk and discuss, yeah, we need to pay more to that retirement, we need to change it, whatever. They're going to bring a recommendation back to the board. It has to be approved in the handbook by the board. And so that's the policy portion that the board has.
So we're talking, so then the teachers have two ways of negotiating their pay then?
No.
Wait, we have this, and that we're
This
negotiating.
is a retirement policy.
Yeah, so we're negotiating that through the
Their pay
handbook.
is only bargainable,
Yeah.
okay, through
Forgive
negotiation.
me for being dense, but I thought you just said we have two different ways of bargaining.
No,
The bargain through the handbook committee and the bargain through the CPI.
no. The bargainable, the only thing, again, the bargaining committee can do is the base wage, the wages. Okay, we can't talk about health insurance. We can't talk about dental insurance. We can't talk about all those items. Retirement package, we can't talk about. That's not a bargainable item anymore. Okay? So our handbook committee that this is under, which again, we have a couple board members on that, can make a recommendation to the board to change the handbook. Okay?
So you can change it in the teacher's handbook, but you can't
Change it in board policy.
change it. It's not a bargainable, they're not bargainable.
We're
But
saying the same thing.
No, okay, as a board, you would have just the sole responsibility. If you make it a board policy, it's the board's sole responsibility to do whatever. Period.
We're not allowing any
And that
teacher input
eliminates,
at all.
that
You're talking
eliminates the
about-
input from the teachers.
Yeah, we're talking about trying to be open and with everybody.
Absolutely.
And maybe not this board, maybe two boards down the road, we throw this as board policy, and they go, what is this? And Brad's not here, and they, well, what is this? And they take it out, and then all of a sudden somebody tries to retire, and they go, well, where's my retirement? And they go, well, as board policy, we changed that.
I was
And-
afraid of it in the other way.
Yeah,
In a handbook.
Okay, but with the handbook, all we're doing is we're allowing the teachers input into what's going on in their work rules. Could it be in either one? It could be in either one. I'm gonna argue back to you that as our employees, as being an employee, if I'm going to take something out of your handbook, no matter what your motivation is, no matter what you're taking something away from me. Okay? Do we as an employer want to send that message to our staff?
We were going the other way. We're wanting to make sure that, and
I
to
know.
take it out of an employee handbook and put it in the board policy, to me, makes it seems like it's a little bit more
To you,
solid.
it means more solid and harder to
Absolutely,
change.
because this is what the district is doing. It's not something that could be negotiated down or something like that. This is what we decided to do as a district, as a minimum, for our employees. I was concerned about it when I read it in the handbook. I thought, why in the world is something like that buried in a handbook instead of right here, where anybody that comes onto the board can read our board policy and know exactly what's expected. That was my concern, is that I didn't want anything to happen here that And I had no idea we were gonna have this kind of an audience, but
Yeah. Well, you can see what it generates.
I didn't know how it generated because I didn't tell anybody. We're just gonna talk about retirement policies.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's.
In
I'm
the
gonna
last
talk
two
about
board
I'm
meetings,
gonna
Tom,
talk
you
about-
said you wanted it on the agenda.
Yeah.
It's
Sure,
been noted
yeah.
in Mr. Shireman's that
Yep, that's
it
fine.
hasn't been on,
You
that
know.
you want to talk about teacher retirement policy and administrator retirement policy, and so it's been in the
Yeah.
minutes.
Sure. Oh,
And
that's fine.
so that's how people would know,
But-
is they read minutes too.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if it's to me, it's not a problem
I don't know
that
if I'll call
I
it right.
really worry about.
Somebody's sleeping.
So,
Mr. Fincher?
Yeah.
Aren't handbooks board policy? When a handbook is approved, it's approved by the board.
Right.
That makes it
Yeah.
board policy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that happens every year, and so as far as a board member knowing, yeah, you get a copy of that every year. So,
Would it be so easy a solution as to say in the board policy, see teacher handbook?
that's,
Would that be a simple solution to the issue?
well, we
That
certainly,
actually makes a lot of sense.
I think we certainly don't want to take it out of our committee's hands for any reason.
I like that. We could do that. So teacher retirement policy and see the teacher handbook. That way there's a very clear line of communication.
I don't think the teacher handbook is available online, though.
it's not online, no.
But maybe we should make it available so that people can read it online.
Well, if it's a liability of the taxpayers, it should be where the taxpayers can see it. I would sure think so, because it's the cost of running the school. So it gets back to transparency again. So how do we want to proceed with that? Do we want to create?
Well, I think that, given the fact that Brad hasn't had, he didn't know about this, we should probably have you dig into it a little bit more.
Yeah, and again, this is a discussion, and so as far as to take any action tonight, you wouldn't be taking any action
Yeah.
tonight. But, yeah, okay, as far as having some notation as a board policy that, look into, obviously, we got some concerned teachers that are on the handbook committee here, and I think it's something that I would want to hear some of their input also and concerns, because they wouldn't be here.
Well, absolutely. I like Peter's idea, of putting it so that a reasonable person can get on through our board policy and find out what our teacher retirement policies are. And if it's in the handbook because of negotiations or things like that, I think if it's financial obligation of the district, people ought to be able to just click, 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 and see exactly what it is.
Just to have it available.
Yep.
Okay.
So is, in the next, you're gonna get back to us on what,
I guess I'll research and find out what kind of connection that could be. Like I say, I guess I would want to, as far as some people from the handbook committee, and I don't know who's on the handbook committee here, but I would want to talk to them, and it might not be something that you do at the very next board meeting, but, okay, we have a handbook committee meeting, and we get them together, and let's kick it around the block.
Do we just note that there's a teacher handbook available? Because if we talk about noting teacher retirement policy, then we're going to be footnoting all over the place, because the handbook is 30 or 40 pages long and covers all kinds of work rules, and we'd have to relate all the way back and forth.
So, let me do a little
Just to
research
say
on
that.
it, and like I say, as far as,
Regarding Brent, the PowerPoint that we were going to watch
Yeah.
tomorrow, if you watch, there's all kinds of links on there.
Yeah.
So, like when you get to a certain point, or teacher retirement policy, you can click on
Yeah.
a link and it'll
Okay.
take you right to it. So I mean, it's
Okay.
it's all there, and
Okay.
it's very accessible. So I mean, that's
and I'd like to go right to that part of the teacher handbook.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, that's a simple solution. It gets down to
Well-
what are our obligations, and can anybody go in and just click right through it?
so,
Okay.
But let's do some research, and like I say, I guess I would want the input of the handbook committee and something to address down the future.
Sounds good. Anybody got any more questions or comments?
I guess that's the teachers, okay, the administration's is a board policy. I didn't know if that was something you were going to discuss, or,
Also, I was just gonna note that that's, there's the administrative, and then there's the support staff is in our policy manual, but the teacher one wasn't. I just noticed there was.
In the copies that you got, Dave, you mean?
No, in our
in the board
handbook.
policy.
In our board policy handbook.
There is one that it says board policy for administration, board policy for support staff.
But not for the teachers. And that's what Tom wanted to include.
Okay.
Administrator retirement policy, are we going to discuss that, or are we going to go take that on the next meeting?
Well, I thought, both of them is on here, so is there anything that you want to talk about for the administrative
Yeah, I think that's.
retirement policies?
Certainly. Yeah. I don't like it. And the administrator salaries are already very, very high compared to the teachers. The teacher's benefits are for 5 years after 15 years of service. The administration benefits it's only after 10 years of service, but we have to pay it for 7 years. $1,000 is good enough for the teachers, but not for the administration. The board policy is not defined. It's basically a blank check, the way it reads right now. And I just think having something sit in our board policy that is not defined is not very prudent as far as us as a board. Because there is a huge disparity between what the teachers are going to get and what the administration is going to get.
Yeah, again, not knowing what you were going to bring up, in the history of it, it was something that was bargained for back many years ago, set up as an early retirement. That looking at, and I can, off the top of my head again, okay, teachers have a 188-day contract, administration has a 260-day contract. That was all taken into consideration when this was done, the difference in salaries and benefits. And so again, I don't have those kinds of things in front of me, but I know that board that did that bargained in good faith with the administration, and I happened to be on the administration at that time, and I've served more than 10 or 15 years. I don't have the policy in front of me.
I do.
But and I'm not here to talk about individual because that's not on the agenda. I'm not here to talk about my retirement policy. We'll do that in closed session.
We're talking about.
You're talking about that policy there.
We're talking about.
Yeah, I'm just giving you history, Tom, as far
Yep,
as
yeah, I got
I was
that.
part of, and the board, none of you were on the board at that time.
Nope.
That set that policy.
Nope.
And like I say, I know they bargained in good faith with the administration, and that board set that up, and so that's what I can tell you, how that policy is in there.
Your concern is the difference?
It's a huge difference, and it's not defined. Right now, there's nothing defined on it.
Do you have a specific change that you'd like to see made?
Yeah, I'd like it eliminated.
You'd like it eliminated?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
We're not paying the administration as much as,
Okay.
Okay.
we're not paying the teachers the same as the administration. There's a huge disparity in the dollars. And we are already paying into a retirement policy. So it's a subject
Okay.
and that may have been the wishes of that board. I think we ought to bring it up and talk about it with this board.
And I'm going to go back to what you just said about the teachers making it a board policy. Along comes a Tom Lewandowski that says, I want it eliminated. And that's why those teachers are here tonight.
These are apples and oranges. The teachers, that's a very fair, I understand that completely. But this thing here, the teachers they define a year, they define a dollar amount. It's very, very clear. this thing here is not clear.
Read it to us, Tom, will you?
Would you like a copy?
Well, if you're saying it's not fair, I think we ought to at least know what we're talking about.
An eligible administrator shall receive the amount of the family health insurance premium for the month following his or her retirement date as a monthly stipend. The amount will be frozen for the length of retirement benefit. The other problem I have with this, it's not a retirement policy. Our last superintendent went from here to another school. He didn't retire. He got another job. I mean, we wrote him $18,000 a year for 7 years. The guy didn't retire. I mean, it doesn't say that you have to be 55 years old like we're doing with the teachers. It doesn't say we're paying them for 5 years like we're doing with the teachers. This is for 7 years. And I don't think when the thing was passed, if you follow state statutes, there's no way that anybody could have figured out that the prior board was giving the administrators $100,000+ pay raise. We've got the minutes from the meeting, and there are state statutes that govern that kind of stuff. And if you're going to give the administrator a $100,000 pay raise, 1931 is pretty clear that anybody that's able to read should be able to figure out what's going on. All it says is a modification of an administrator contract. Well, we have an administrator contract. That doesn't say anything about this. The administrator contract doesn't say anything about 260 days. There's nothing in there about
Our
your
administrative
contract.
contracts do say 260-day contracts.
I wonder if I've got yours with. Because I can't see a date.
So, well, we're talking about a retirement
regardless.
policy right now. Now you're going into individual, and if
Well,
you're
you
going to
said
bring,
that yours is
if you're,
260.
if you're going to bring my individual
Okay,
This is
contract out, that is a closed session item.
Yeah.
then
And
Yeah,
I'll
we gotta
remind our
be
board
careful
president
of
of that.
we shouldn't have brought it up.
So let's start
You
back
shouldn't
at,
bring that stuff up then, Brad.
you're out
You
of
shouldn't, I
order.
know.
You're out of order, both you guys. Now knock it off. Now let's start at the beginning, Tom, so we can understand where you're coming from. So to become eligible for the retirement benefit in this section, an administrator must serve the district for at least 10 years as an administrator. Okay? No problem with that yet.
Teachers are 15.
Okay, but this is administration we're talking about.
I understand that.
So an administrator who serves 15 years in a combination of teacher and administrative roles in the district with at least 5 years as an administrator is then eligible. Bullet point 2, administrative roles are defined as superintendent and building principal. The benefit period is for 7 years following the date of retirement. An eligible administrator shall receive the amount of the family health insurance premium for the month following his or her retirement as a monthly stipend. This amount will be frozen for the length of the retirement benefit. So, now tell us why nothing's defined in here. What are we missing?
What is the amount of the family health insurance stipend? We define it as $1,000 for the teachers. Right now, what is that amount for the administrator? They don't say anything in here about the size of a deductible. A guy could walk in and say, I want a Cadillac health insurance policy. Say, well, gee, that's going to cost you $4,000 a month. Well, I guess that's what it's going to cost.
It's the district health plan. We just
It doesn't
approved
say
those.
that. It says whatever.
That's what it's been.
The amount of
And I
health
can tell
insurance.
you, Tom, 4 years ago, before you were on the board, when Act 10 was passed, I asked the board if they wanted to visit that and change it. And you know why? Because at that time, the health insurance plan was $22,500. And I went, and the board went, and we went to a bigger deductible, cutting it down to $19,000 at that time. And so I said, okay, that's part of the board's wishes, that I'm going to lose, money from retirement because we're changing an insurance plan. Okay? I'm going to go back to where did this come from? This came back, again, from negotiations with the administration and the board at that time as a way to save money and a deferred payment plan. And so, again, the idea is you're going to hire somebody at a less salary than myself. I'm abnormally, because I've been here 35 years now. And so you're going to go out and hire somebody that's less. You're going to save that money. Okay? I took less wages years ago. I gave up dollars for an elementary principal off of my contract because I knew I was getting the retirement stipend. And chances are she wasn't going to be around. So I said, fine. And so I bargained in good faith. And then I have a Tom Lewandowski come along and say, I want to take that away because I can. I've got the board power to do that. I'll tell you what, if that got out around the state, that that's the way our board treats administration, good luck. The reputation of this district.
Where does conflict of interest start and stop in this? Because if we're going to keep talking about you, this is supposed to be a board conversation about administrator stuff. If you keep weighing in, where does conflict of interest start and stop here?
You wanted the history of how this came about?
No. I've got the history. I read the stuff. I've got the history.
You read the board minutes back in
Yeah, they're right here.
2000, whatever it was?
Yeah, it's 2004.
Okay.
Yeah. I've read the board minutes.
What's your point, Tom?
My point is, if we're going to move forward with this, don't you think we should have a discussion about clearly defining this instead of it just being a blank check? If the board's wishes are to continue on with it, that's fine. I'm one vote out of 5, and I'm okay with that. But having something sitting out here where we have no idea what our costs are, I think is foolish policy. When we have spent all the time to define what all the people are behind us.
Well, I'll state it right. I mean, if you choose to pursue this, I just want to let you know I will be against it all the way. If you're looking at what's going around, because you talk about I talk to everybody around and things like that. I work in the city of Spooner right now.
Mm-hmm.
We are heading. This type of stuff is what the Spooner School Board has recently done. They lost half their teachers. They have no teachers left. The students and parents are running from the school district. We could save, sure, we could cut that out. Brad would probably retire tomorrow and he would still be eligible for it. We would save some money 10 years from now. At what cost? Okay. If we want to negotiate this, we can maybe negotiate it. If you come up with something that is, I just don't like it, I want it eliminated, I'm not going there.
Are you looking at just eliminating the retirement benefit or just
I think we
defining
ought to
it,
have a
Tom?
discussion and see what everybody wants. But having it sitting out there as a blank check, I think is fiscally irresponsible.
But you did hear Brad say that he took a pay cut, what, four years ago?
Oh, many more than that.
Well,
When we cut the insurance down.
Well,
So,
that, yeah.
So, 4 years ago, that check was more than it is now. I wonder what the board was thinking at that time when they defined it as open-ended insurance cost. I suppose, it had something to do with getting this guy onto the Medicare ages. I don't know.
But that wouldn't be true, Greg, because there's no requirement of age. Because of the teachers, it's 55 years. This one here says there's no age limitation. I was just shocked at the disparity between the two quote-unquote retirement policies. That how come it's good enough for one but not good enough for the other? Especially when we're looking at a wage that's double.
And it's, you want to talk real world, we can talk factory line worker and CEO. Different animals, not a direct comparison, but our teachers are fairly intelligent people and they know the game. If they choose to pursue to become a principal or a superintendent, and that's their goal, great. I have a son studying to become a teacher, and when he went into college, we sat down and I said, you realize what your financial outlook is if you choose to become a teacher. He said, yeah, but I just love teaching. That's my passion. It's what I want to do. And you talk about comparing apples and oranges and things like that. The teachers know what's going on. Okay. It was a negotiated thing, I'll reiterate it. It is not. My parents were retired from some place that called it deferred comp.
Mm-hmm.
It was the same thing. And, so it was very, very similar in nature. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, bear in mind,
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking this at a truly financial requirement. We're not sitting here talking about the particular retirement policy on people that are making what the teachers are making.
Mm-hmm.
We're sitting here with a situation where the people that are benefiting from this, and the last guy that left, they were being paid very commensurate with what superintendents are making in the area. And so they're not, because I remember sitting in on the contract negotiations last year, and well, this is how much this one's making, and this is how much this one's making, so this is how much I need to make, because that would put me par with everybody else. So we're not sacrificing anybody's potential earning or anything to that nature by any means. We're not holding down the wage to protect this on the backside. The wage is being paid commensurate with what's going on. So,
And
at a minimum, we need to define what we are doing with this instead of just leaving it out there.
To me, it is absolutely defined. It's the month after retirement. It is the health plan rate.
Brad, go ahead.
So.
Again, going back to, and even today, the retirement benefit here is commensurate to other superintendents, okay, other districts. Now, some districts chose to, Tom, when Act 10 was passed, instead of having their administrators pay the half of the retirement, what they did, they said, okay, you will pay that, but we'll put that, whatever it is, into a 403B for you. So when you go online and look at administrators, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, I guess is what I would say. And so whether it's a pay in advance or a deferred, the school board that settled this with the administration at that time chose to go the deferred route. And so I guess this here, maybe the administration, maybe myself, and the administrator at that time and principal at that time were too trusting in the board. But we figured, you know what? We'll take the deferred option, and we'll allow the school district to save money on our behalf. And so then when you come in here and say, well, let's cut away it completely, I guess that school board that put this in place, with fairness in mind, that you just say, I question that.
Well, go ahead and question it.
So-
We're not dealing with somebody that's earning $60,000 a year.
Yeah.
This was,
Again, it's comparative to other
Yeah.
settlements for administrators.
why do we call it administrator retirement policy when the last guy left, took another job, and we got to give him a $126,000 parting gift from the good people of Clear Lake? That doesn't seem like it's fair at all. In the essence of fairness,
Well,
I mean, the guy plops in, spends 10 years here, we pay him for another 7 years.
Yeah.
He was only here 10. He didn't spend his career
Yeah.
here by any means.
Go ahead, Brad.
Okay, but now, and again, I don't want to talk, that was that guy. You came in here tonight to say do away with it completely.
That,
Now I'm going to put my stamp on it. I've been here 35 years.
you said we can't talk about you, Brad.
Nope, I said I'm going to. You're right, we can't talk about individuals, but your statement about doing away with it, okay, obviously there's one person in this room that's going to be affected by it.
Your
By that
package is-
statement.
if we want to talk about you, your package is almost.
No, you're out of
160.
line, you can't
No,
talk about
no.
his.
Well, then we got to quit bringing it up,
Yeah.
because there's got to be a
No.
line between conflict of interest here.
He can talk about himself, Tom, you can't talk about
Right.
him.
That's the difference.
If we're gonna
Or
talk,
we're
if we're
negotiating
gonna,
something that is going to be in his checkbook, where's conflict of interest? Because he's negotiating right here.
He's not, he's
I'm not
educating us
negotiating.
on what's going on.
this is the policy.
Then why is the superintendent weighing in on our policy? Isn't this a board meeting?
Don't you want it, don't
We,
you?
we
he's the
invite, we
most-
invite him in to do such, that,
Yeah, ask for the
that
history.
very thing.
Okay, well,
Okay,
then
yeah.
we'll run with that. But I still, when we look at the dollars involved, there's a huge disparity
Yeah, that'll
between the
define
people
the-
on the one and the people on the other. And we should
Compensation.
revisit this at a minimum. And see what this particular board would like to do with that policy.
If you wanna
Would they
do
like
that
to
tonight.
amend it? Would they like to define it? Would they like to leave it alone?
Okay,
This is the discussion end of it. So
Okay.
that's my
If we're just
question.
gonna discuss it, then.
So, is there any other discussion that would want to be weighed in on the topic? So, just to get this straight, Tom, what you're proposing is we look at it, define it, cut it,
Or whatever the board decides. This is a discussion right now. We can't take any action on it. We can't even come up with a consensus tonight, because that would be illegal.
but I just want to know what direction you're coming from.
Is that I think we ought to revisit this as an action item. Consideration approval of a administrator, well, I'm not gonna do what they did in '08, but as a board policy change. Because it is part of our board policy. So I think this board should take the time to look at it. And then we can have our on-the-record conversation about it. And then we define what does this board want? That's what, 2004 is what that board wanted. But using today's wages, today's benefits, what is today's definition gonna be?
So, you're thinking that the decision that this board makes, if we were to entertain that, you're thinking that this board is wiser than the past board that set that up in the first
I
place?
never said that at all.
I think Tom just wants to bring it up to make it, to bring it up as an actionable item, to get things on record. You know, I went on record tonight, so, but,
I was looking at another school districts. It was in Reedsburg, and they're having the same issue with the Affordable Care Act, because health insurance is changing so much, and so they had to figure out a patch, you know. But they had the same discussion, and I don't know if maybe that's something we should think about, because insurance is changing so much right now, you know, with Obamacare
Yeah.
and
And that's what, Dave, I go back to 4 years ago, when I brought it up at a board meeting, Greg was there, Brent was there, Tom's sister was there, and actually Sherry's the one that said, no, our present, you're not ready to retire, Brad, and our present policy is in place. The board will deal with you when you're ready to retire. And so, but yeah, it was brought up 4 years ago when the Act 10 was passed, and so.
but even
Nothing
I mean,
was done.
But on top of
To be
that,
entirely clear about that, do you want it to continue on with all benefits intact? And then that, if I remember right, the board said, no, if you want to retire, then you retire now. But there was benefits that.
No, there was no discussion like that, if you
I
can
don't remember
recall
anything like
that. You weren't there, but
No, but I, some people,
talk is cheap.
well.
Well,
anyway,
I just want to reiterate before we're done, though, if we were to take an action that did any kind of cutting or any kind of change in an agreement that was made in good faith between a prior board and an employee of any sort, whether it be the teachers or whether it be our administration or a principal or anybody that we do business with, that doesn't send a very good signal out.
well, and I guess we've, heard from Tom and myself. do you two have any input as to whether you'd like to pursue this or not, or?
Well, I guess, for me, this is fairly well defined. I guess there's the question on the insurance piece that's, not specifically laid out. But, I just have to go back to the idea of when a contract is put together, unless there's some dire reason to change it. That's a contract that was put together and established by, the board before us, and it was negotiated, and, that was a good faith decision, Unless we're in some sort of, some sort of a critical point here where we need to make some changes, and I don't see that right now. I just, maybe there's a little cleanup on here on the insurance piece exactly that's not written into the policy, that is assumed on whatever the current rate is, but, beyond that, I'm pretty strongly that when you put together a contract with someone, you honor that. That's, what people do.
I understand that. Ma'am,
Right.
that was put together with a prior administrator. It's a board policy item, it's not.
Yeah.
Because when we negotiate the cost of a person, that's what the cost of a person is. And this is on top of that. And at a minimum, I think we ought to at least look at changing some of these things to get it a little bit more commensurate with our teachers. How come we hold them to a different standard than we hold our own administration? What kind of a message does that send as a board to the people here? Say, well, we've got two classes of citizens here?
There's two different job descriptions with two
I
different requirements
understand
and two
that.
different times of days and.
But we're all here,
Well,
same building, same everything. So
There's a
Go
different
ahead,
level
Brad.
of responsibility that goes with that.
yeah, I understand that, but that's, if we're
Go
gonna
ahead.
call it a retirement policy at a minimum, shouldn't we at least look at bumping up the years to 10, from 10 to 15 or 20?
Go ahead, Brad.
Well, and going back to Tom's comments there as far as, okay, why are there differences? Yeah, because the teachers have a 188-day contract. Administrators have a 260-day contract. Okay, so in 10 years, does it equal 15 years worth of teachers teaching? That was talked about back in whatever year. Those kinds of things were looked at. So,
Could you show me on a contract where it says that, on a teacher's contract that says 188 days? I've yet to see, I've read your
Yeah.
contract, Brad, and
yeah.
I don't see 260.
I'll take a look at it.
If you look, 'cause I've-
I just know I'm on an annual contract, and annual means 260 days.
Well, and it also says you've got 40 days of vacation. you've
No,
got
it doesn't
14
say 40 days. You're misquoting that.
14 days of vacation, 3 emergency
Yours.
sick days.
Yeah.
I'd be more than happy to bring the contract out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's for a closed session deal. So
So,
I'm just giving you the history of
I
why
think-
there's some differences.
yeah.
it also says if the teachers are not in the building and the students aren't there, you don't have to be here either.
So,
That's in the contract. So
So, Dave, you have any thoughts?
No, I just was looking at the minutes from 2008, and it's not very well defined what the contract was. It just says, the board held the first reading of an administrator contract modification. And then the second week, they approved an administrative contract modification. But it really doesn't say what the modification was. And I think there needs to be a little more description as to what that was. I mean,
if I may, if I may ask a question.
Okay, then we're going to wrap it up, Tom.
Yep, that's fine. If it's an administrator contract modification, we sign contracts for teachers, administrators, support staff, and all that kind of stuff. How come this didn't say we're going to establish board policy 528? I mean, if we're all about transparency and being open and honest, how come that didn't say we're creating board policy 528? Because administrator contract is completely separate from board policy. We just went over that with the teachers. Fair? So that's misleading at a minimum.
Well, I'm not sure, but
Wow.
that's not
We're-
actually on the agenda tonight,
well,
so.
again, that's research to be done, is they created a board policy back then.
But it doesn't say board policy. It says
I don't know where you got those minutes from or what that's,
right out of the paper.
yeah. And so,
I'd like to see it.
no, I don't need to see it.
Well, I mean,
I'm
you
gonna
know,
research
what-
it, because if
what
I had
about
known those things beforehand,
transparency?
I would've.
What about being
We're hearing
honest
this
with
word transparency again, I hear that.
So that's where I get frustrated with stuff like that, because it was not honest with the tax-paying people at Clear Lake. An administrator, contract modification is a contract.
Right, right.
It's not a board policy.
You're saying that a board that did that was not honest?
That would be 100% what I'm saying.
Accusing the former board members of not being
No,
honest?
I'm saying that if they were modifying board policy or creating board policy, it should have said, we're making board policy. Why does it not say an administrator contract is completely different than board policy? We just established that. So why did they call it one thing when it was another?
All right, I'm gonna reel this in now. We're not talking, right now, we're talking about district retirement policies. Now, is there any more discussion that we wanna throw out on the subject?
How do we move so that we can put that on the next agenda, so that we can discuss it as a board and see if it's an actionable item? If the board wants to leave it the way it is, we leave it the way it is.
I don't
If the
think we
board
do,
wants-
Tom. 3 of us have spoken up and said that we wouldn't support it.
We're not making any motions tonight.
No.
You're right. You're right, but
So-
3 have spoken that we didn't wanna, pursue it, and
Do you not want to pursue it, Peter?
I am fine with this other than the question about the insurance.
So should we talk about the insurance? Because it is a blank check.
Well, if we talk about it, and we all have a vote, and at that time, when we have a chance to vote on it, then we can, everyone can express their opinion and weigh in, and it can be determined whether we do it or not.
Okay.
So,
But- I caution you, because let's say we're talking about teacher contracts now and looking at an action on their retirement. And it's on the agenda as an action item, and a number of them are promised X amount of dollars for their retirement right now, but the board's looking at it. The people that are close to retiring, what do you think that they would do if they risk the chance of losing their retirement? We'd have a pile of resignations if there's a chance that their retirement was going to be cut. So the signal that's sent out from this board, keep that in mind when we go forward here.
Well, I think we ought to all weigh in on it.
Well, and I again, going back to what we've talked about a few times tonight, it's a solution looking for a problem in my mind. If we hire, if at some point we hire, it's what I know you hate to say it, but it's what we have worked into. It's what we've done. It's what we've negotiated. However you want to say it. It's our honor as a school district towards our employees
To honor that.
So why don't we put it on-
and I agree with Brent. I mean, we have to talk, these are all the things that we need to talk about, and then we throw it out there, and then we vote on it. And we want it on record, we want it in the minutes, this is what we voted on as a board. And, right now, predetermined, we don't know, but that's what we were elected to do as a board, is to talk about these things and make some tough decisions. And that's why there's 5
Sure,
people
absolutely.
on the board here.
Absolutely.
So,
And
and then it'll go on,
yeah.
then we'll go on record as, so this person didn't want it and this person did, and it'll pass or it won't. So, I mean, that's the way the process works.
So what we're talking about is monkeying with an agreement that was made X amount of years ago with somebody that we've got that agreement with. Now, it's one thing to mess with an agreement when we don't have agreement with somebody, but if we already got an agreement with somebody, think about that. Is this how gentlemen run a business?
and I'm cool, that's fine, but we should go on record and vote for it, vote on it. We should be able to put it on the agenda and vote for it, vote for or against it.
That's what we're talking about, Dave, right
Yep.
now. We're talking about whether or not we
But,
want to pursue
but
this.
because the way this is written in our agenda, we can't vote on it today. We can't make that decision. We have to put it on the agenda and do a motion, and we have to either vote or not vote on it, or vote against it, 5-1, 4-1,
Yep,
3-2.
and that's what we're talking about right now. Do we want to mess with a contract that we have with somebody right now that was made in good faith? Or, at the same time, would we want to visit this for the next contract? We can take a look at what other people are getting.
I think we should wait till the next meeting. Do some research and, yeah, and talk about it again, and if there's nothing gets changed, then that's the way it is, so that's the way the board works.
So what do you think, Pete?
Yeah, and like I said, I just, without knowing, but I don't agree necessarily with you, Tom, that it's a blank check. I mean, it's frozen for that period. It's what it is at that time. We know what that's gonna be. I mean, the assumption of a blank check is that we have no idea where this is gonna go. We have an idea right now where it is and where it's going to go, at least within a range. So it's really not a blank check by any means. It's an amount. It's just not clearly defined right now, but it's not like it doesn't exist. We know what that cost is right now. We can project fairly well where that's going to be, especially if we're not talking about someone who's 10 years out.
My question is how come we have it as a blank check when we've got, the teachers are clearly defined? And how come the teachers are if it's an individual?
And I can't answer that. I wasn't there to know why that was set up
This one
exactly
is
that way.
family health. That's completely different. The teachers have to
Right.
stand on their own.
Right.
They get $1,000 and that's
Right.
it. If the teachers were anywhere close to this, then that's our board policy. That's what we do. But there's such a disparity between the two. It's just like, are you kidding me?
Go ahead.
Brad, you mentioned that you assume that this was based on what the school district policy was. It's not like going out and getting a different policy from another company. This is what all the other people are on.
This is the policy that I'm on along with everybody else.
Right.
So
And
it's defined.
Well, I mean, maybe that should be more specific in here as, a monthly insurance premium of the district healthcare plan. Just like insert that in there so that it clearly defines, so that you're on with everyone else here. I mean, is that?
Yeah, because I can't go out and get a separate one myself. I mean, I'm part of the
Right,
group.
yeah, or else you'd have to do COBRA or whatever else. So, but I'm just saying, to clearly define this, couldn't you just put the amount of family health insurance premium that, provided by the district, or the other members of the district, the teachers and everyone else that are all on the same plan, right?
You could define it more.
And, that's the thing, and that's where I'm at, is that we've got an agreement with somebody right now. If we were gonna be looking at this for the next administrative, the people that don't have, because Chris is under
Yeah.
that same thing, and Nick's new, just starting it out. I mean, I'm not all about breaking agreements. Even if I make an agreement, I still stick by it because I have to. And I think that our board probably has to do the same thing. At least I would strongly encourage it to. Otherwise, we've got no scruples to sit on. So if the conversation was turned a little bit more towards, let's visit this and look at it from a whole, with keeping in mind the fact that we have agreements that we have to pay attention to and honor in the conversation, then I'd be in a different spot right now. But we're talking about changing an agreement with somebody that was made by a prior board of patriarchs of our community who did the best they could at their time, and that's where I stand. So if you guys want to visit this going forward, I'd be for it, visiting it going forward.
I would agree.
But not right now when we've got people that are vested in it. And if we do visit it later on and we still have people vested in it, we're going to have to somehow monetarily satisfy the degree in which they're vested into it. because we've got employees to maintain and employees to catch. So, that being said, do we want to pursue this, or do we want to pick it up later?
Pursue.
Brent, I know where you're at.
Yep.
I say, when you say pursue tonight, I mean.
Pursue it at the next meeting.
at
The next meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd like to do that.
Peter?
Maybe more clearly define it, but not necessarily eliminate it.
It feels like we're having a vote here. I'm a little
Yeah, I
concerned
know.
about that.
I'm just trying to feel you guys out whether or not you want me to put it on the agenda.
Dangerously close to a
Yeah.
vote.
I think we have to, I don't think we can make a consensus decision like that. Because it feels like we're casting votes one way or the other right now.
Voting but not voting.
Then what we'll do is we'll end discussion now, and then we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Well. if it
Discussion
was-
regarding exit interviews.
Well, 1 second. Typically, we have a discussion, and then it moves to an action item, or consideration approval of modification of something. Are
Sometimes we
going-
do, Tom.
Well, are we going to do that, or are we not?
Boy, I wish I had 25 years' experience under my belt
Can't,
right
it's a
now.
discussion item, you can't.
It's a discussion item, so
Yeah.
how do we get it on the agenda for the next board meeting?
Talk to your president about it.
Well, that's not gonna work. So as a.
Why, Tom? Everything that you've asked to have on the agenda has been on the agenda now.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ask for it to be a discussion, I'd asked for it to be consideration approval. So, and this is discussion, so we've had a discussion, so let's move it ahead and do consideration approval for the next board meeting, and then everybody can weigh in a open meeting legal sort of way.
Go ahead, Brett.
It's gonna be on the next agenda.
Okay.
Okay. Then we'll move on to discussion regarding exit interviews.
I know that was something that people had mentioned about as people were leaving, asking, do we do exit interviews? Do we have a formal exit interview? No. Do the principals talk to their people? And I would let Chris probably talk to that because he had a couple people leave at the elementary. Sure, we talk to people, we find out. And when you talk about exit interviews, it's really a process that, okay, if somebody's leaving or looking for another job to leave, they come to the principal, they come to the superintendent. We make it known this year that we're not going to stand in front of anybody's advancement. We'll help you if we can. Not that we want to chase you away, but if that's your wishes, let us know. Because sure enough, that superintendent or that principal from that school that you're applying is going to call Mr. Peterson or Mr. Gillis or myself. We're going to find out. So we tell our employees that up front. Now, when they come back and say, yeah, we've got an interview, okay, we'll expect a phone call, whatever. And then the next thing, okay, yep, I've been offered the job. Or, okay, I'm taking the job. We still meet with them unofficially that, okay, why? Anything as far as, and Chris, I'll let you, I mean, you were the most recently, things that you've talked about people that are leaving.
That was a good question. I remember you brought it up, we were doing exit interviews, and I guess, we don't have a formal process we use where it's specific questions that we ask, but it's always a conversation. Just, I mean, teachers generally, in my experience, have come to me and said, hey, I'm going to pursue this opportunity maybe, and usually asking for a reference or something like that, and then we usually, like Mr. Harris said, let me know, hey, I have an interview next Tuesday and get an offer or whatever. And as part of that discussion, it just always naturally flows, hey, why am I looking at this opportunity? What's the reason? Is it full-time versus part-time, as the case with a couple of our jobs this spring? Is it an opportunity for a different grade level or a little different type of position? Or different opportunity? Is it closer to home or family? Is it salary? Well, people generally are pretty open about, hey, here's why I'm looking at another opportunity. So, but I guess I've never used a set of pat questions or specific questions. If that's something that we want to pursue or want to put in place as a procedure, we can certainly do that.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Peter, what do you do in your school?
Similar kind of thing. I have a script I kind of have put together for myself, but for no other reason, just to kind of make sure that I'm kind of consistent with it. But, and I use it to, see if there's any issues, any red flags, anything that, and I ask the question, are the things that we or I could have done better as an employer, and, those kind of things are all on there, but it doesn't go much beyond myself as I'm doing it, so.
How do you feel people respond? It's tough because they're going to be calling, the next place that hires is going to be calling you for a recommendation, so they're not going to say, well,
Right.
I think
No,
this
typically
sucks.
I'm just one person doing it another way, but typically I've done that after, like Mr. Peterson said, when they come to you and say that they're looking, they've thought about it, talked to other people, prayed about it, done whatever they're going to do before they come to the employer and say that. And so I'm not going to stand in their way either. It's, so I just use it for just to kind of get a pulse, for who they are or why they're leaving. So it doesn't go beyond that.
Does anybody out there have some type of a exit interview type of thing?
And that's where I was going to go with this, Greg, is we'll research it as administration, find out what other school districts are doing, and we can put something together, bring back. And so that's part of this, is I just wanted to get this on here if it's something that you wanted to see. We informally do it, but if you want to see some type of formal policy, and I don't know what our, as a teacher that's leaving and they say, I don't want to talk to you about an exit interview, I'm just leaving, we don't have any grounds to hold them to it.
Yeah.
And so that's why,
What person should be in charge of it? Because if it's administration, it's going to lead to a pretty watered-down exit interview.
Well, I don't
Does
know.
a third person do it, or?
Well, and I guess, again, from experience, I would say if it's they've already made that decision.
Yeah.
I've always had a lot of honesty. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't have anything to lose
No.
at that point.
so I'd say the building principal's in charge of whoever that person is, I mean. But, again, it's on the agenda because you'd asked about it, and that's what would be my suggestion to you is, well, let us do a little research on what other people are doing, and
As a question, what would we do with the information?
It's-
Where's it going to go other than right to you?
administration.
Yeah, so we're going to ask you to do more work that really wouldn't generate anything?
I don't know, if it's some kind of conflict in a building, okay, and somebody tells us that, won't we address it or try
Well, if
to?
you're already kind of doing it.
Yeah.
I guess I would say, I don't know that I'm gonna gain a lot from
A formal
process
policy.
like that where, if I'm blindsided by some shocking revelation in an exit interview, I guess I don't have a very good pulse on my building or my people that
Well, that's my-
people that
Yeah.
work with me, and I don't think that I'm gonna learn a lot.
What are
Yeah.
you doing? If you guys are already doing it.
Okay, good enough?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, then, acceptance of resignations and retirements.
Got one.
Clear Lake School Board, I would like to tender my letter of retirement today, July 13th, 2015. I would stay on the job until December 31st, 2015 in order for the district to find a replacement. Thank you, Brad Ayer.
Thank you for all your service, Fred.
Okay.
So,
That was as of 12/31? Was it 12/31 to the end of the year?
December 31st,
Okay.
2015,
Okay.
as of July 13th.
Okay.
So, like I said, when you're looking at screwing with people's contracts, it's serious stuff. And here we sit. Proud of yourself, Tom?
Guys, come on.
No,
Guys,
not there. That's
no.
not what this is about.
No,
This is about, hey, I put in 35 years in this district,
yep.
so.
Okay, well, then I guess I'll be looking for a motion to accept this retirement letter.
I'll make a motion.
I begrudgingly second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept Brad's resignation, with many thanks of many years and many contributions. 35 years.
You must vote.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. Motion passes.
What was the vote?
1-1. I think I heard.
What?
Did you say anything?
No, I accept it. Yeah, just assume.
Okay.
Did you say no?
3-1-0. I said no. Okay, now I'll entertain a
3-1.
motion to adjourn.
3-1.
3-1-0, unless you voted
I
that.
abstained.
3-1-0. Looking for that adjournment.
Also move.
I'll second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. We didn't approve the vouchers.
Oh, good call, Tom.
I'm just kind of going through here real quick to make sure they're all here.
What I had seen was that everything was in order. How about you, Dave?
That's just going through the list here. There's quite a number.
Okay, so we'll wait until you get done with
Wanted to
them.
take some of those, Dave?
I'm almost through it here.
I apologize. We should have covered it quicker.
Yeah, you should apologize, Tom. This, I think you have to keep.
We're good.
Brad.
We're good?
Yep.
Okay. I'll move that we approve.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're
yeah.
finishing up now, Rob.
We gotta finish up. I move that we approve general fund vouchers 72,372 through 72,498, avoiding 72,456, and wire transfers 141, 50392 through 1450421, and 151, 60,001 through 151, 60,014, and activity fund vouchers 2153 through 2175. That was a pile.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve those vouchers as listed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Now, do we have a adjourn motion?
Yep.
And we have a second?
All right.
Been properly moved to adjourn. All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.